Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today with episode 210 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast.
210. It's me, Karak with ACG.
And we are joined by a very special guest.
Hey, this is Rob. I'm with the YouTube channel Rule of Two Review. So super stoked to be on this podcast. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Rob, would you like to tell everyone what you're doing over on Rule of Two Review? Great name that rolls off the tongue, by the way.
It really does. That was an accident name that I created back when I started as like a WordPress site in like 2010. And then YouTube took off, and I was like, I guess I'll do this on YouTube. It's also a Star Wars reference for any super cool
Yes, it
Star
is.
Wars. Yes.
That's what I thought it was from.
That is what it is.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha.
I didn't even catch that.
That's the rule of two, So there's always two, but basically the channel's just me. I'm definitely a big Nintendo fan, so a lot of the focus of my channel is talking Nintendo stuff, talking news, talking random theories and speculations and stuff that comes to my head. But for the most part, it's just any video game topics. If big news breaks, I like to kind of break it down. I don't do many huge projects, but I happen to be working on my first huge project, and this is, I guess, kind of a good opportunity to bring that up. But I'm working on what I'm calling the 20 best games for an Atari Jaguar Mini. And I know that's the weirdest freaking thing anyone could ever think of. But I love the Jaguar. It's this weird, forgotten, obscure, terrible 90s console that I adore, right? Because we all have those weird things that, like, you maybe know it's not so great, but it just clicks with your nostalgia in that one way.
Well, maybe not nostalgia, but I love the Vita.
Yeah. But the Vita is different, though, because the Vita was at least pretty much objectively a good machine that just didn't do super well, right?
Yeah, I'd say so, at least.
Yeah, I mean, me too. And the Jaguar was not really very good.
The Jaguar was the opposite of that.
It was, but I still collect for it. I'm actually looking at picking up a Jaguar CD later today. I've been eyeing one on eBay for a while, just for the sake of collecting. And the spin to this big project that I'm working on, it's my first scripted, heavily edited kind of documentary style video. I've already done the audio for it. It's really just an excuse to talk about the top 20 Jaguar games out of the 50 that exist. So do with that math what you will.
Wow, there's only 50. That's awesome.
50 official games, but there were some homebrew games that have shown up over the last like 15 or so years too.
Wow.
It's a really weird. It's a weird story, the Jaguar. So I just plan on covering some of that, and that's probably going to take me another 2 or 3 weeks. But that's one big project that I hope to get out soon that I hope people check out.
I'm looking forward to that because I know nothing about that system. That was a little bit before my time.
That was before your time.
Yeah. So for me, I was kind of born into my first consoles were I remember like the Dreamcast and the 64. Those were my two things.
Good stuff.
So you weren't even alive then. So I got excited about the TurboGrafx Mini coming out soon.
I don't know what that is.
You wouldn't even know what that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's funny you say that, Karak, because the reveal of the TurboGrafx Mini was when I got the idea to spin my big Jaguar documentary video in the Jaguar Mini kind of format,
Yeah.
I was like, man, we got Genesis, SNES, NES. There's the N64 Hyperkin thing. There's once we got to TurboGrafx Mini.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Somebody's digging the bottom of the well when you go to the TurboGrafx 16, and I loved it, and even I would admit that. So I don't think a Lynx or a Jaguar is that crazy when it comes to what could possibly come out from a company.
It might not be, and so if it happens, I just like the idea of getting that first video out that actually talked about it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's a joke, but it'll be fun to talk about something that I really like. So
that's awesome, man. Yeah, it's funny you mention like nostalgia machines because this bad boy just came in the mail today. Little Game Boy Advance SP. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's funny you mentioned like retro fueled projects. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to make a video kind of just about the Game Boy Advance SP, like. It's strange you mentioned like top games because that was the idea that kept cycling in my head, just an excuse to talk about these games I grew up with that I loved so much, and an excuse to play them again, for work-related purposes, we'll call it. So it's just funny you brought that up. But anyway, Karak, on your side of things, is there any projects that you're working on, man?
Yeah, I'm stoked. I think I had. Oh, by the way, if I look like I'm suckling blood. It's not my teeth. It's my green screen's all screwed up, so it looks like I'm drinking blood or something. It's crazy. It's all red.
It's funny because in the middle of Rob talking about his project, I changed it to green, and all I see is you just like show your teeth real quick and then hide.
Yeah. People are gonna go back and go, what?
Yes.
I'm incredibly happy with the listen rate of a video I did. I'm breaking down every episode of Stranger Things, and then comparing it to episodic gaming and what TV shows can do that episodic gaming should pick up on, and then what TV shows could do that would make a TV show feel a little bit more ingrained, which I think Stranger Things already does. And so that is each episode is about hour and a half, 2 hours. Where I go like scene by scene in Stranger Things because I like the show. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of stuff about gaming that I think that show nails. And I wanted to sort of compare and contrast like episodic gaming or just games in general, how they build their storylines, how long they take, how quick they are sometimes. And you're like, oh, I saved this guy. It's already done. No one gives a shit because I'm saving everybody. Those kind of weird disconnects you get in quests. And then I'm reviewing... I'm reviewing two. I don't want to say they're amazing yet, but I'll just say they're amazing in their idea. There's a game where you drive around trying to solve mysteries in a taxi cab, and that is called Night Call. And you are a taxi cab driver listening to people behind you, and as you're trying to make money, drive a taxi cab. Wasn't that revealed at this E3? It was. It was.
Yeah, that one looked interesting. That's already out or coming out?
Yeah, no, it's coming out next week. And so I got in contact with those guys, and then I'm looking at Griftland, which is a card-based game and might be the only card battler game ever on PC that I enjoy. So far, I adore it. So we'll see if that continues. Dragon Quest Builders 2. I've got about 62 hours in that. And then I'm also doing a review of another game. And because I can't remember the name, it doesn't mean it's bad. I literally have not got a chance to turn it on. Well, yeah, you just mentioned
4 different...
Yeah, serious. 60 hours in Dragon Quest.
And I'll be doing the Surge preview.
Cool.
I can't remember the other game. I apologize. But anyway, yeah, there's 2 or 3 games I'm reviewing. It's been a lack of reviews, period.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done like little side stuff. But man, Anchor, I was telling you about this before, taking the podcast, and I think I forgot to send you a link. I apologize.
No, you're good. It's no rush.
I'll do that while we talk.
I have it on my phone, and like I saw it every day, and I honestly procrastinated. So,
dude, it's so great. It's so and that's been really helpful. But yeah,
nice.
So some game reviews and some podcast stuff.
Good stuff. Yeah, for me, it's looking like August 1st might be a big day for me. We'll see. The beginning of August, the first week of August, should be really good. But we'll see. I don't want to tease what yet because it's paperwork, all that fun stuff. So we shall see. But anyway,
is that what you and I talked about
last week?
Yeah.
Yes. And then we'll fill in Rob after this so that he doesn't feel left out.
curious.
I thought that was for sure. Is it sort
it's
of
for sure.
the
it's
paperwork?
Just paperwork. So it's like
understood.
Anything has to change. Anything falls. Yeah,
gotcha.
All that complicated.
I was just
stuff.
making sure. That's what I was wondering. Is if something complicated had sprung its. Like you'll put a plan together, you'd be like, "This is for sure happening." Windows update yesterday for me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, this is for sure.
Yeah, the Windows update of real life, legal documents.
What a disaster. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so with all of that in mind, we were talking a little bit about consoles, nostalgia, and some little children's first console, maybe the Switch Lite, which was just revealed this week. Rob, as a Nintendo-centric channel, we'll say, let's get your starting thoughts on the reveal, where it's at. You covered even the rumors leading up to it, so you definitely had, I'd say, the most stake in this out of anybody here. So what is your general takeaway of the $200 Switch Lite?
So general takeaway, I've thought about it a lot, and it is kind of a tricky takeaway. Overall, it's a pretty quality looking product, right? I think that it looks sleek. I think it looks exactly like what Nintendo wants it to be. It's hard to doubt the quality of their hardware design. The Switch had some issues at launch, but overall it was really solid. All their hardware is. So I think this will be the same, and I think that they know that there is probably a market for this thing, so I expect it to do really well. I think that most people who might go into buying this thing, truly knowing what they're getting and knowing what they want out of their gaming with it, I think will be really, really happy. My personal opinion, and I discussed it on my own 16-minute long sort of breakdown, I'm not terribly excited for it. I don't think it needed to excite me, of course, but when I just look at it as valuing my own purchasing decision, I think that the big thing everyone talks about, not having the opportunity to be played on a TV, is a huge misstep that I think is going to lose them a lot of other potential consumers. Like I said, I expect it to sell well in its own little bubble for sure. Right. But I think that there's a lot of other people and gamers and money on the table that Nintendo might have been missing. I mean, I might have had a reason to buy a second one maybe for my girlfriend instead of waiting for a Pro, if that ever exists. I might have had a reason to buy that because she is going to be playing Animal Crossing, for example. And this is the kind of thing where people say portable-centric games like a Pokemon and an Animal Crossing would be perfect for a portable-only Switch. And I think that's true. But it really stings to me that in my opinion, I feel like they would have had to have very purposefully, by design, not allowed this thing to be docked, because I can't imagine that they necessarily saved any money or cut any costs in removing that feature. You know, as opposed to changing the Joy-Con functionality, you don't have separate devices, you don't have HD Rumble and IR sensors, you're clearly cutting costs, so you can sell it for less. But I feel like the pass-through ability, either to be plugged into a dock or just a cable that plugs into HDMI in your TV, I can't imagine there's a lot that they pulled out of the Switch Lite to remove that function. So I feel like they literally made just a conscious effort to do so. And I really wish that they didn't do that. But that's only if I was looking at it for my own purchase. And since I'm not really concerned with it, yeah, I think it's a quality looking device for people who want it. But I wish that they did a little bit more with it. It's kind of my hot take.
Yeah, the thing I struggled with the most is that lack of docking, because for me, my takeaway was it changes the Switch from a thing where you switch from like TV to handheld to just a brand name where now anything's on the table. Like you mentioned a Switch Pro earlier. What are they going to do with that? Is that going to be docked only? You know, you cannot take this out and make it portable, but you can access certain games kind of like, I think, what was it, the 3DS XL sort of offered? Where, or the new 3DS XL, sorry.
The new 3DS, yeah.
That's what it was, yeah. And, you know, where certain games were accessible there. I just wonder if that becomes a thing. But overall, yeah, the lack of docking. I saw your video. You mentioned, like, the connector, and it's like, how much do they save by forcing this change? It's strange. Did they end up spending more to get rid of that? You know, that's what I wonder. Because it's strange because they, like you said, they cut costs. Like they even shrunk down the screen a little bit. I wonder if it's because if you could dock it, would it just devalue the current Switch in a sense?
It's a good point because that's the $300 purchase that they probably would still like people to buy. You know, we have a $200 and a $300 console. We'd sure love it if you bought that $300 one. So if they make something that competes in that exact arena with that, I think you make a good point, actually. Maybe, and I didn't consider that could be the number one reason why. It might have nothing to do with like the components or the design of the console to save money. It could have literally been to differentiate itself so much that they wouldn't like cannibalize themselves, kind of, right?
I think that's actually, I think we hit the nail on the head.
We solved it for you, Nintendo. There you go. We figured it out.
Karak, what about you? You know, I remember when the Switch first launched, you didn't give a shit, and as you got that charger from Big Blue, sorry, had to insert the brand name, and started finding games like Dragon's Dogma. You know, you started to fall in love with that
Switch.
Skyrim as well. What are your thoughts on the Switch Lite?
It fucking sucks.
Oh my.
It sucks. The number of things that system doesn't do isn't worth the $100, and it is not compatible with some games. They made that very clear. Lower right analog stick already has an issue with Joy-Con drifting, and it's quite widely known that the reason that the right analog stick has an issue with Joy-Con drifting is because of the way it's set up, and it's actually technically worse now. It's also low enough that they purposely obfuscated it from the commercial, where they didn't show anybody ever, not even a single time, hold it correctly. The reason why is because the human hand, I have medium-sized hands, by the way, like legit, actually considered medium. I cannot use the analog stick because the throw to touch the bottom of the analog stick would require me to break my hand, to break my thumb to actually do it. So you're going to have to hold it sideways instead of up and down. It does not do the major thing that they use in their commercials, which is switch. Joy-Con controllers don't snap in, so you're going to change the audio, the audio if you want to say it's the switch. Can't do that because it fucking doesn't even do that. Labo doesn't work. A number of their
wow.
most popular games are going to require some huge switches. The battery is 20% longer, which we figured out indicates anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour and a half tops.
I think they said on their website, they gave it like a half an hour range on their website.
Yeah.
Like a half an hour improvement, I should say, which is like nice, but also pretty negligible. You got to think about
it's pretty negligible because I think most of us also don't play till it dies. The human brain doesn't usually work that way. We usually go, oh shit, I'm at 10%. Let's throw this on the charger. None of the current peripherals work. You know, the dock wouldn't work, obviously, because of its size difference as well. There's those kind of things. The battery plug that I have probably won't work. All of the third-party stuff won't work when it comes to clicking on if the form factor is required to be the same. I think, in all honesty, I am dead set against breaking compatibility. I always have been. I was dead set against removing the Kinect, not because I love the Kinect, but because there was a compatibility issue where some people would have it and some wouldn't. I don't want them to break compatibility of any game ever. I hate it.
It does almost like segregate the market. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Yeah.
Yeah.
It does do that. It does.
I do not want me to buy a game and somebody else to buy a game who lives with me and have us have different types of switches, and the game works on mine, doesn't work on theirs. Additionally, it's some of the games that I was quite surprised, Labo being one of them. I was sort of blown away that they were like, hey, here's a big deal. And then they're like, actually, technically, not really.
Wouldn't Breath of the Wild be one of them? Because to solve one of the shrines, you have to use motion control to move around.
It still has some kind of motion
gyro.
control.
Yeah.
It's got a gyro. It just doesn't have the unclickable move around throw things.
Okay.
Yeah, so, there's that IR sensor on that right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, man. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, the IR sensor on that right Joy-Con that doesn't exist, I don't think that was the only sensation of movement that you got out of that when you were talking about the waving separate, but I think that will inhibit some of that, if I'm not mistaken. So that's part of that big change that they had to do to their hardware to make the Switch Lite even exist. So
and
it does, like you mentioned, that bullet point, all those things that they had to list in that video that it doesn't do. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, and then I think the last thing is, so I did look this up because I am a nerd in this way, so, and I'm glad you guys talked about it, but a typical HDMI switch chip, usually what I mean is a splitter, so you split from your screen to somewhere else at whatever resolution, is about 99 cents ordered wholesale. It's probably more like 50 cents if they ordered an okay one and put it in the Switch. So I don't think it was a money. It could have been a form factor thing of why they didn't put that splitter in there. They could have used a USB out. There's a couple things that they could have done. So I agree with you guys. There's obviously a reason to remove all this compatibility. I just don't know what it is, and I don't like it. I just don't want it because this is something where if families get together to play these games and suddenly you're playing and it's like, oh, you can't. That is weird to me. And I would say that, I could be wrong, I feel that Nintendo's never done that before. I feel that most of the time they're like, you can, but there's something going on. Here they're like, you legit can't. Like, it's not that you can do it less.
There definitely have been some instances where they've done similar stuff, and I think people forget sometimes how often Nintendo has made incremental changes to their hardware. Like, nowadays we're immersed in this whole Sony and Microsoft doing this Pro and Xbox One X thing, which I think for a lot of people feels like a first, and in a lot of ways it is because they made such significant changes to like the capabilities of the machine. But I mean, Microsoft iterated with the 360 a couple times. PS3 did it, and Nintendo did it with the Wii. They did it with the NES. They did it with all the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance and DS models in super similar fashion to what they're doing going from the Switch to the Switch Lite. So I don't know. It's such a tricky thing, and like all those negatives you bring up are really good points. I definitely, like I said, there's things about it I don't like, but I am quite a bit more positive still than you are. I do still see what I think Nintendo's trying to do. And I think that there is for sure a market for people who will think saving $100 to get a device that's just a replacement for my 3DS or my Vita or whatever will be seen as worth it. I, however, have had this weird epiphany of a potential long-term problem I see for this thing down the road that I hope doesn't turn out to be true, but I kind of think will turn out to be true. I'm curious what you guys think. I think that some people might get tricked or trapped by this thing. I have a big fear that this would be more adults, not so much kids. Like people who buy it for little kids, I don't think this will be an issue. It'll be perfect for them. But I wonder if like adults, people like your guys' age and me, you know, mids, late 20s and 30s, if people think, oh, I've been waiting to buy a Switch, like I didn't really want it, but I kind of did. Oh, here's this $200 portable only. That sounds great. I'll finally buy this Switch. But are those people going to buy a Switch and start to play an incredible and beautiful game like Breath of the Wild or Doom or Dark Souls and think this is so great, but this tiny screen sucks. I wish I could just put this on my TV like every other Switch allows me to do. And are they going to realize I just blew $200 of my money that could have gone to just a $300 regular Switch?
And additionally, it kills the Pro controller a good amount, because a lot of people I know aren't going to play the Pro controller on a little tiny screen. Usually they got those for the... Yeah, they usually got those for the big. They usually got them because, I'm docking it. Additionally, I think we're pretty US-centric here, but I've got some friends from Europe where they were reminding me that it only saves them $50. So everywhere but America, it's only saving people $50. So to me, my personal belief is they should have dropped the price of the Switch by $50 and said, here you go. Do some other colors on the original Switch. Don't break compatibility. Save everybody $50. $50 for us. 25 whatever for somebody else. The problem with money and where you live and where Nintendo prices their stuff. But everybody there was like, dude, I just looked, it saves us legit, the retail price only saves us $50. And you're like, at $50 then you have to start going, I'll just save another $50.
What would your guys' opinion be if they released the Switch Lite the way it is, but it was even cheaper than $199? What if it was $150? Would you guys have a different opinion?
See, I thought the $200 price tag was appealing. As we dive in more, it seems less and less worth it. But to answer your question, I just cycle it back to, and this isn't an excuse, I guess, is how it could be viewed. But I very much feel this is geared towards kids. It's dropping right at the start of when holiday shopping usually begins. I can see grandma, grandpa, mom, dad going in the store and getting little Johnny or little Karak a nice Switch Lite. That's where I think they're doing it solely because of that. Because the thing is it's already been flying off the shelves, and I think it's gonna continue to do so. But ultimately, I think the issues you brought up earlier, if they cut the price, it would be that much more appealing. The one thing I do worry about though is, and here, you might be able to answer this, Rob. Can you dock it to charge it?
You can't. No, you can't. You can, at least that they've released. You can only plug it in.
It's strange with these handhelds, because I have this is perfect. I have two sitting right next to me. I have my DS and its charger, or my DS XL, my charger, and I have the Game Boy Advance SP. And both of these are compact enough, and they have the closing to hide the screen, where I don't really get nervous having them on top of a surface or sitting out in the open, and they don't take up a lot of room. But with the Switch Lite, you just have that screen constantly exposed, which will get covered in dust. You have no way to cover it, unless you have, I have a case, a Zelda case, which is leather, and you can zip up your Switch when you take it on the go. Maybe you always put it in there, but then that's more room, and that was built for the original Switch, so it's going to rattle around in there. I think that's an intangible that people aren't going to realize until they get it and go, oh fuck, I think that's something that people may bump into. So as time goes on, I think it's going to become that situation where you do your research on the product. Maybe you test it at a Best Buy, a GameStop, if you're going to shop there. And I feel like a lot of people, as they dig in more, if they're listening to this conversation, they'll probably go, I'll just save the extra $100 and buy a real Switch. I think it's going to push a lot of people in that direction too.
Another thing that bothers me is when you look at the price point and you say, okay, so maybe it's geared more towards kids. That comes into I think the discussion we've had before that always consistently bothers me, is that people forget that folks age. And what Nintendo's doing is purposely doing this. That way they know that they'll sell an adult who maybe was 16 when they got the Switch Lite. They're 18 now, they got their own apartment, they got a TV, and they're like, fuck, I can't dock this thing. So so Nintendo's like, haha, guess what? We've got a Switch normal for that, which is exactly what Microsoft said when they said, oh, you want to play old games? We've got a 360 for that.
We got a 360,
I hate that shit. And even at $50 less, it still breaks compatibility with Labo and those things. And I just don't like, it doesn't matter how cheap it was, it breaks compatibility of something that the company themselves said was important. If they had not sold these things as being vital to why the Switch was different, I might change my opinion. But Nintendo was the one who told you time and again it's compatible with moving around. It's portable, which we all know is full of shit. Unless you have carpenter pants, that thing's about as portable as an Xbox. I could strap them both to my back. Yeah. But they don't fit in a normal pocket.
It's mobile, but it's not portable.
Mobile.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so to me, I get worried about the age thing because I think Nintendo, I think you're right though. It is aimed at kids because they know a kid will play it for a while and then maybe level up. But the compatibility currently everywhere else is leveling up to a system that is compatible with everything into this weird oddity where you have a system that is not compatible with everything. And that, so even at $50, I would still say that still bothers me. I don't like the lack of compatibility. Again, because they pushed it. They were the ones who said this was a big deal. And that bothers me.
Yeah, it's true. I will say that as much as a lot of these like negatives that were like very harshly breaking down, as much as they do exist, I still do personally feel like in a lot of ways, I think it is mostly harmless because I think that they're willing to say, hey, we want this thing to be geared towards the kids market where these aren't problems. All these things that the three of us are talking about and a lot of other people are talking about won't be problems for those kids. And I feel like that's totally fine.
Yeah, that's true.
And I also think that this could be, I said this on Twitter too when I reacted to it the other day. I think that this will also be an ideal purchase for people who maybe want to keep their current Switch, but want or need a second one for whatever the reason might be. People who can keep the Switch for all of the regular, back and forth docked and portable gaming they want to do, but then because you can share some gaming profiles and some save data between the two, that maybe they want that second Switch for when they are going to go fly to somewhere to travel, as opposed to just go to work and take it with them there. And this smaller one makes more sense for that. The concern I have, which is kind of what I was getting at a few minutes ago, is I'm so worried about people who waited to get a Switch and get this and then they feel trapped without the TV play, or people who trade in their current Switch thinking this is going to be the greatest thing and save them money, but then they almost immediately start to miss the fact that they could dock Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey.
Well, yeah.
I think that a lot of people, I've even thought about making like a video, like just kind of talking about it as a warning, like, hey, if you're going to do this, really think about it because you seriously might miss TV play more than you think you will.
Yeah. Also, it's interesting because I just, sorry, this thought's on the tip of my tongue and it just hit me because this news strikes at the right time because I've been like really invested in portable gaming lately. I've been, we'll talk about games of what we're playing later in a segment, but I've been playing Persona Q2 on my DS. And that lasts about, I think it got me about 5-6 hours of life before it needed to be plugged in. And I remember just clear as hell that these Game Boy Advance SPs lasted like 8 to 10 hours. Like they just didn't freaking die. And that's one of the benefits of portable gaming is that you can sit down for almost essentially a marathon session. But if you're going to play, some Hallmark titles like Breath of the Wild, and your Switch only lasts 3 hours, one of the benefits of being able to marathon is like, okay, I'll play for 3 hours. I'm laying in bed. I'm on the couch in the other room. Maybe you're traveling, and by the time you get home, then you could dock it and continue playing while it charges. You can have that marathon session while you're playing handheld. It almost forces you to stop. And actually, one of our patrons, Grimblade, had mentioned how he kind of likes that about the Switch. It gives him a chance to go like, all right, maybe I should go do something else. And I feel the same way. Sometimes I don't want to get wrapped up in that marathon. I kind of appreciate that with the Switch, that it dies so fast. You're like, all right, I played for 3 hours. Like, that's pretty good. I'll go do something else for a little bit.
I guess I should go outside for
get some sunlight or something like that. But obviously there are days, and there are many people out there who don't want that to stop. So I think the Switch, it's meant to be, like you guys said earlier, mobile. It's not like a portable device, and I think that's another thing that people will realize. They'll go, oh, it's the perfect replacement for the DS, and it's like, what's great about the DS and why it sold so much is not only its great games, but it did not die despite the how powerful and big these games were for its handheld. So I think that's another stumbling block people are going to discover. I feel a lot of stuff's going to rear its head as people spend time with it.
Another thing that I get where you guys are coming from, and maybe it's my age, but I don't know any kid who has $200. So it's not aimed at a kid. It's aimed at a parent buying for a child.
Right.
That changes it. And I think what happens is it's easy for us to say, this is aimed for a kid, and then, not that you guys did this, but to be like, because you didn't, but whitewash all those problems we've mentioned away and be like, aha, it's aimed for a kid. And guess what? It's not. Unless your kid's pimping drugs on the side, they don't have 200. What they do is they have a parent who says, what do I need extra for this? And then you start going, well, there's this and there's that and there's this and this doesn't work and that doesn't. And then what happens is the parent has to look at a Christmas present, for example, and say, I'm going to spend $200 on this, where I believe they could have said, drop the price of the Switch. I'm going to spend $250 because it's a Christmas sale, or they've dropped the price in retail to $250, which we know would be at $199 in a lot of places.
Will this be
remember, the Xbox was $150 at places. Absolutely. You mean the price?
Yeah, sorry. I know you were going on about something else. I was thinking out loud.
No, that's literally where I was headed, was that we saw the Xbox drop to $150 when the X came out. We saw all during a Christmas time, it was on sale multiple places at $150. That's an insane deal, especially like if you had a Game Pass or something. So you just have these parents who, I get what people are saying that it's aimed for a kid, but at some point you have to say maybe 50 to 70 is aimed for a kid, maybe. But when you get into the $200 range, then the question is, are you aiming it for dumb parents? And I don't mean to be rude.
I think it's
but the question comes up to where, are you questioning their intelligence and sort of hoping you'll slip this in, and then hope they'll upgrade a year or two later, and like you said, get stuck. Rob said, get stuck with some, or get trapped. I think might be. I mean, this is insidious, but it feels like their plan.
I think it's a combination of a couple of those things, because I do still feel like, I guess when I say that it's something for kids, or when Maddie or anyone else says that, I do kind of think they mean exactly what you're saying. It's at $200. It's not meant for kids with allowance money to go buy. It's for sure meant for parents to buy because their kid's been begging for a new console. They've been begging for a new Switch. They don't have a Switch. They really want one. Parents are like, $300 is too much. Here comes this $200 one that might also be more sturdy and durable for a child.
Yeah,
maybe.
sure.
We're assuming that, but it probably will be.
Better thumbstick, by the way, or better digital pad.
The D-pad, which is great. Yeah, and that makes sense, because part of the reason the D-pad on the Joy-Cons is the way it is because they could be pulled off. I have it right there.
And flipped.
And those D-pads become your ABXY, and I think people kind of forget that sometimes. Now that function isn't there with the Switch where it's all attached, so they gave us a regular D-pad, which is really great. But I also think that this is kind of what makes the Switch as a product unique, is it is so crazy versatile. Even the Lite, which I'm, again, not really a huge fan of myself, is because it's also marketed at adults and Nintendo fans and game fans who want this for collectability, or because they think, and hopefully accurately think, that they want something that is going to be only portable. And so, and it's kind of why I go back to what I was saying a couple minutes ago. Even though I don't think this is really the greatest direction for them to go and it's not appealing, I think that if they maintain the right market in targeting it to the right people, and they don't try to trick people too much, like, because some of what you say about them tricking I think is true, I think that it's harmless. Because I think that the educated will probably still be like, man, I just don't want this dumb Switch Lite. It's not for me. But I'm totally into that regular Switch. Will they drop the price soon? You make a great comparison with the Xbox and the One X. Part of me wants to think that maybe their plan is to, by the holidays, drop the regular Switch $50 this year, around the time the Switch Lite actually launches. I mean, we still have half the year to go. So that could be the plan. There is a difference, though, which is when Microsoft did what they did with the One X and the Xbox One, they needed to make up ground and momentum that Nintendo kind of doesn't. And the less a company is struggling, the less likely they are to be compelled to drop the price. Like, the Switch still sells so well that they don't necessarily need to drop the price. If it slows down, that's where they might want to see the reason to drop it by $50. But I mean, that still could be this year. It could be with the Switch Lite coming. So I don't know. Do
you guys also worry about performance? Because now you'll have companies aiming for just handheld performance versus docked. We spent a lot of time discussing like what that could mean for a developer later, who's like, we've got this kind of, because we have developers fighting it right now. Just trying to get to a docked performance versus handheld. It's like, what do you do? Do you aim for, what are they going to aim for? Let's say it does really, 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 really well. Is a developer going to aim for that versus docked and not worry so much?
It's a good question. I watched a video where somebody kind of just brought that up. Like, this is going to be a long-term problem because of the development of the games, and anything is possible and it could happen. But my personal belief is I just don't think we'll run into that issue. You do have to. You obviously
any more than we currently have it.
You got it exactly. Yeah. They're already optimizing it in kind of these different fashions anyway. But so much of the experience is also the same. And I don't develop games, so I can't say for sure. But I just feel like with how many Switches are out there, like 40 million Switches right now, even if this thing does pretty darned well, I would be shocked if it changes the focus of developers making. But in a world where this thing just like destroys expectations and in a year has doubled the sales of the regular Switch, maybe we see developers not even give a crap about making stuff that's going to work on your TV. They're like, we don't care what the TV performance looks like for those scrub fat Switch players. We just care about the Lite players and their portable experience. But I think that's personally my guess is that's such a small chance that hopefully we won't run into that. I think
we will see less games that take advantage of Switch specific attributes like the waggle and stuff, taking it off, because that does require QA. Well, your QA team will have to QA that. They will have to test it. They will have to program for it.
I feel just what people are drawn to with the Switch is the portability, a hybrid, and the library. And by the library, it's not just those exclusives. It's ports. And so I think developers are more concerned just getting the game running and not saying like, oh, you can have Connor from Assassin's Creed 3. And if you take off that right Joy-Con, you can swing it around and you can counter if you want. Yeah, it's like, no. Yeah. You know, they're not going to do that. They're just like, get it running. It'll sell just fine because it's Assassin's Creed 3 on the Switch, for example. I don't know why I always go to Assassin's Creed 3, but...
Neither do I, bro.
I mean, it's a game, so yeah.
It's a game.
But I do it all the time. I don't know why. I must subconsciously just love this game. Because I do like it, but I must love it underneath it all.
I have weird go-tos that I go to for examples also. I bring up like Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead all the time, and I don't know why. They're just the go-to games for examples.
It kills me, man. That, Spider-Man, Fallout 4, like, they're just off the tongue every time.
Good game. Good games.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, yeah, I was, it's funny that we even talk about this because, and I don't know if we're running too long on the topic.
No, you're good.
Cool. So the video I actually posted yesterday kind of touches on this. I was kind of evaluating what's happening with the Switch Lite and how it changes like the Joy-Con usage and stuff. And I made a video kind of asking the question, does the Switch Lite existence mean that the Joy-Cons and their features were like a bust? Like, did these things really just not pan out the way they were kind of promised when Nintendo first revealed the Switch and the Joy-Cons and HD Rumble and all that stuff? Mm-hmm. And it makes me sad because I like the Joy-Cons. They are damn tiny and really frustrating, but in a lot of ways I do like them. Mm-hmm. And I love the idea of HD Rumble, and I think it's cool that it's got an IR sensor, but I do kind of feel like Nintendo really hasn't taken advantage of them. Most third-party developers haven't taken advantage, even though the games are all good. We're not seeing the Joy-Cons and HD Rumble actually impact gameplay. Which we've seen with some Nintendo innovations in the past as well.
It reminds me of a port, Phantom Doctrine, which I was playing, and I really enjoyed it. It was a solid game. It's just there for the gameplay. Yeah, it's Switch, and it's it's like XCOM, Cold War era stuff. And when you, long story short, go to dispose of a body, you because it's about stealth. It's not like XCOM where you're shooting everybody. You're taking people out quietly and getting data. And when you knock someone out and you go to dispose of their body, just the HD Rumble goes insane. Like, it's the most aggressive, and I'm like, I would love to just rip these out of the Switch right now. So
I've been playing Bloodstained, regrettably, on the Nintendo Switch.
Oh, man. And
when you're low on health, the HD Rumble kicks in and like does this pulsating sort of thing. And it's like it's there's a tiny part that's like respects how dope the technology is because of how like organic and crazy the vibrations and the pulsating is, but it is annoying as fuck because it is so just like in your hands, like bam, bam, and you're just like, it hurts. It almost hurts. I'll waste potions in that game just it really is. So that's just a crazy example. It's kind of the same thing, So I don't know, the Switch Lite, it's just, I don't know if you guys see anything similar. Like, do you feel like it's showing that Nintendo's maybe giving up on some of those core features because they're making a new device that way, or could we see more games actually prove that wrong and start to use some of those Switch features
I feel like
next year?
It shows how much they value it if they're going to just move on and make a brand new system without it. I understand concessions have to be made to make it cheaper. So that's also that aspect, but I also think the decision to make a cheaper console and remove those specific functionalities mean they're like, okay, is this mandatory to the Switch experience, or is it about portability and
and they were probably heat mapping all that, right? Like they were I mean, I'm sure they were heat mapping everything you did, and we're like, okay, people probably aren't using those. So, or they're not getting the feedback we want, so it's not as important as other things. I mean, that makes good business.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. The only argument you could think is, did developers make enough games that gave people features that they should try to use those with?
No, that's
what I'm saying. I'm saying the two combined. I mean, whether it's Nintendo, whether it's them, I'm just saying I agree that they probably dropped it because, as Maddie said, they were just like, those are droppable.
Vital.
They were dropped because they were droppable. They were expendable. Yeah.
And it makes me sad because, like, I'm someone who, when I played Mario Odyssey, I preferred to play with the Joy-Cons and flinging Cappy. Like, that's the kind of shit that I like that kind of stuff, and you can't do that.
You know how much more
games
comfortable it is? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, there are games like, I think of ARMS, Mario Tennis Aces. Like, those are great Joy-Con games. You could play them docked and handheld, but those were the best when you took off the Joy-Cons. And like I still remember last summer, my friends and I, like, we got like 6 people around the TV, and we're like swinging and hitting the tennis ball back and forth and fighting each other in ARMS. Like, it's a blast. So yeah, that's stuff people will miss out on, and those are games that might suffer because of that. So I still tell people, all it did was make me value my current Switch more. I was like, yep, this is just the right purchase.
That's a good point.
And it is like worth noting we would be doing a disservice to the conversation if we didn't bring up that you can sync regular Joy-Cons to the Lite still. Right? So feasibly you can play a Mario.
You would just need to buy them.
Yeah, you would need to buy them or have them, and also you'd be playing on a tiny screen, and there's no kickstand on that.
I was gonna say, I don't think there was. So that was a weird concession. That little spring cost them an extra $1.
Yeah. Very weird choice.
Unreal. All right. Any final thoughts on the Switch Lite?
I'll maintain. I still think it's a harmless device, even though I'm not interested in it. And I think that they made some mistakes with the design that I think could have made it a still better product at the same price. I think it looks solid, and I think it's going to sell well. And people who know what they're getting, I think, will probably overall be satisfied with it. That's probably my final.
Mine's just I care more about the upgraded Switch that's been rumored, the Pro, we'll call it. That's the one I'm more interested in, seeing how they do that. I saw Spawnwave made a video about how it had like a new NVIDIA chip in it, apparently, for whenever they upgrade it. I don't know what kind it was, but that type of stuff I'm more interested in. All right. With all of that said, we move on over to Modern Warfare's semi-reveal. So, quick little story. Pretty much what happened, ladies and gentlemen, is we had the announced multiplayer reveal that Call of Duty does every single year, where in the beginning of August, they have a bunch of streamers, YouTubers come out, they play the game at this event, and you see everything go live, and we all create our opinions on the newest Call of Duty. But what they did this time was they did like a semi-reveal where we saw 4 streamers get together at, I believe it was the Infinity Ward office, and they played a new mode to Modern Warfare 2019, we'll call it, which was named Gunfight. It's 2v2. There was health bars on the top. There is not healing in this game like in Black Ops 4, and the only way you do heal is if you use a stim shot, which is in one of the classes that's preset for you, and the game mode sort of picks for you what class you're going to get. So think of, I don't want to say gun game, because in that one, in the original Black Ops at least, you'd kill someone and then it'd switch you to the next weapon, but think of it as the game decides what guns are placed in you and your opponent's hands, and then you guys face off from there. So it seemed interesting, but I made a whole 13-minute video on it, so I won't kickstart this discussion. Whichever one of you two would like to go first and give us some starting thoughts.
Go for it first.
Oh yeah, thanks. So So I'm a huge Call of Duty fan, but I will freely admit I am a simpleton. I am a pleb, as I think people would say. I really don't dive into a lot of the extra modes on Call of Duty. I like the campaigns, which half the time aren't very good, to be fair, and I just like straight up team deathmatch. So for me,
that is very simple.
It's very simple. I know
team
that.
deathmatch.
That is, I've dabbled in like all the the capture modes and like the defend the territories and like the mosh pit stuff. Like it's cool that every new Call of Duty comes out with like 14 all the extra modes, but every time I think I'm gonna try a different mode this time, I'm like, nah, I just want to do team deathmatch.
Yeah, you just want to shoot stuff. Yeah,
I just want to shoot shit, and I just like being on a team of 8 or whatever and doing that. And I'm pretty good at it, but I really don't venture outside that. And I know I know what I'm spending my $60 on every year. And I'm cool with it. That doesn't bother me. So when I watched this gameplay stuff, I wasn't paying too much attention to the mode itself, although the mode is cool. I like the lack of health and regenerating health and all that stuff. The 40, how long did you say? 40 seconds, 50 seconds? How long are the rounds in that? Less than a minute, right?
I think you got around a minute, yeah. A minute tops.
It's a cool thing. I definitely think that's cool. The main thing that I took away from it was just kind of analyzing how much of a change they've done to the look and the feel, the weight of it all, the visuals. Have they finally given us this new engine to Call of Duty that I feel like they've been promising and no one's really ever seen forever? And I kind of like, I think I walked away pretty impressed because it seems like there is a different like flow or pace to the combat. It seems like there's a lot of extra animation. Which I think a lot of people might see as a negative, and it might feel bad. So I don't know because I haven't played it, but watching it and thinking that it's Call of Duty, I kind of appreciate the extra sways that they do when they go left and right. And I think there's leaning, and I can't remember if there's ever been leaning in a Call of Duty. I don't think there has.
Not that I've ever seen or played.
So seeing that kind of stuff, because I really only care about team deathmatch, so I just wanted to see like, how did this game play? Does it look like a worthy new addition, like to call it a reboot of the franchise and a reboot of Modern Warfare? And the more I watched, I'll admit, the less I felt like they changed it, because it did start to look more and more just like Black Ops 4, which I like, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I just appreciate that they're trying to maybe finally do something, you know? I mean, are we ever going to see a significant change to Call of Duty? And should they ever make a significant change? Because it's one of those, if it's not broken, do you need to fix it? Because it clearly sells well. People will complain it looks and plays and feels the same every year, but also 14 million people go out and buy it every year. But we still, who've been playing it for a long time, we want to see a big change to it. So
you think as creators they'd want to instill something different into their day-to-day lives, you know? You'd think,
yeah. But then you get into that, you know, like they never change Madden, they never change FIFA, you know. There's so many unfortunate franchises where it seems like they just get stuck in that. So, you know, we've only seen this little bit. We've only seen this one new mode. I think the mode is cool, even though I don't see myself playing it. I just like seeing a potential different weight to running around, to aiming down sights. It seems like what they did kind of nerfed the ability to no scope. Did you guys get that impression?
Yeah, it looked,
because the weight is so different.
Really slow, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I feel kind of so far.
Yeah, like there was what stuck out to me was the animations, for sure. Like you mentioned, the swaying left and right. I noted in my video, like when you'd start sprinting, there was the running animation, which was a little slower, but then you could click again, it seemed like, and you'd pick up your gun, put it on your shoulder, and sort of start hustling. And you know, obviously that puts you in a position where you get from point A to point B quicker in a game that usually demands a lot of mobility, but that if you get in front of someone and their gun's at the ready, you're probably like, you're definitely going to die. And so what it does is it makes people start running instead of sprinting. And now the game gets slowed down. And when you see things like animation changes where you saw some of the streamers trying to like do slides and jump shots, and they were still possible, but they didn't look as silky smooth like you were on a slip and slide as they did in, for example, Black Ops 4. And so I started to note that it seemed like maybe they were trying to do a little Siege Call of Duty hybrid, you know, the mobility to, in a sense, of COD, but that time to kill and that like every bullet counts sensation with Siege, where, you know, it's almost as if you see someone, it's like, okay, I need to hit these first 2 shots and he's dead. Like, that's all it takes. And I've played a ton of Siege, almost 200 hours of Siege. So I love that game. And seeing Call of Duty take inspiration from that, I think would be really good for the franchise. And I think, whatever you want to term it as, casual or not, I think even hardcore fans would appreciate that because it's, there's a reason Siege is so popular. And I think that there's definitely a blending of Call of Duty and Siege fans, even though they're two different style of shooters, they're still shooters. And I think people could appreciate, maybe not there's not going to be like levels of destruction like we saw in Siege, but I think people could get behind the gunplay and the mobility combination of Siege meeting Call of Duty. I think that would be great.
Karak. Yeah. Do you guys feel like they're? Oh, I'm sorry, Karak. Go ahead.
No, that was my fault. I cut you off.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob. Before I begin.
Oh, do you guys feel like they're maybe just starting to feel the pinch from other shooters like Rainbow Six? And it's tough to say Battlefield because Battlefield's been struggling the last 2 years, but it still does do things so differently. Do you think that's where they're getting some of the motivation to kind of implement some big changes?
I think the rising of, a game like, even though it's under the Activision umbrella, you still think like something like Overwatch getting really popular, Titanfall, Apex Legends, Titanfall less so, but Apex Legends. Yeah. I'm sure they see around them, okay, we're not, even if Apex Legends, people love to make videos about how that game's fallen off or whatever, it's still a great game, and it still did insanely well. Where I'm sure they're seeing, they're feeling their mortality a little bit, in the sense where they're not, Call of Duty's not going to die, like everyone says it's going to every year.
Yeah.
But I think they're starting to realize, hey, we're not the only big shooter out there, and all it takes is one good night for a shooter to grow into something incredibly special, and everyone to be playing it. And if it's marketed just right, it's free even. They can make more money than a Call of Duty game could. So I feel like they're realizing changing what is there formulaic in a formulaic manner rather. It wouldn't hurt them either, and it certainly even when they've made I put this in quotes, like a bad COD or one that wasn't received as well from fans, which maybe you could say Advanced Warfare or Infinite Warfare prior to launch.
Warfare for sure,
like at least they still managed to sell really well. And so I just look at that type of stuff and I go, if I'm them, I feel that liberation at that point, like, oh wow, we fucked up. And like 10 million people still bought it. Let's try this different thing. And, I guess how many chances do you get is what crosses their mind. But I just feel ultimately they could take a lot more liberties with their franchise. And they probably feel the pressure too now because there's so many shooters rising up in different ways. And just a generic fast-paced shooter without any abilities or powers outside of Black Ops 4 with its specialists. And I think 3 had it. But... there wasn't that differentiating thing. It was usually just gunplay. So I think they feel the need to at least change up how that gunplay feels.
Yeah.
All right, Karak.
I would actually agree with you that they probably, because they did do well even on titles that didn't necessarily set the world on fire.
Mm-hmm.
They probably, a lot of people say, oh no, you have to be challenged like by bad sales before you make a change, but a lot of developers, if they're doing good, then look and go, oh, okay, we can adjust this. People are open to change. I also don't think they necessarily think they need to too much because, dude, a lot of them like it. I mean, a lot of the people who work there are people who legitimately want to. They could have gone, some leave, but some stay there. They want to make those games. Mm-hmm. I think the changes they made aren't necessarily as huge as like world changing. It looks like they made some good changes for a different style of COD game. And it didn't really surprise me. I will say it interested me much more than I thought it was going to. When I saw those people playing, I was like, I actually want to play that. Which I've enjoyed the prior ones, but I don't think prior I was like, I want to play that. But what I saw, that looked fun. Genuinely fun, like something different. I don't care if it's called COD. I don't care if it's called Buttermilk. Like, who gives a fuck what it's called? It looked enjoyable to me, and that caused me to like check that box and go, shit, man, I'm gonna keep an eye on that. Like that. And could a normal Call of Duty, a little faster and everything, have not done that? No. If they had showed something cool there, I could have been like, that looks cool. But this was just interesting. It looked different. Yeah. I love the idea of resetting the weapons. All the the one time they load it up and they're like, okay, it's fucking knives or whatever. I'm like, damn, like that. I like that. And it's not that it hasn't been done before. It's just that the package that they presented put all those interesting things in one and made me go like, this could be a blast. Especially they were showing the 2-on-2. That's the kind of shit that like I could get somebody on the, we wouldn't be great, but it's like throw two people in instead of, because we get that. This is one of the reasons why I like Hunt Showdown so much, because Hunt Showdown is basically teams of two against the PvE and
you don't
PvP.
Need that full squad of like 5
You don't
people.
need the full squad, right? And I also, you've heard me say this before, even though this is 2 versus 2, I'm a big fan of smaller teams or oddly numbered teams. I love that. I love it so that when I say let's go right, I'm either by myself or an odd numbered team going left. So that you can't do the if it's 2 and 2, you're just like, you go right, we'll go left. 2 and 2 against 2 and 2 usually. This is offset. And that's the way this could be. If I go to the right, it doesn't mean 2 weren't going to the right. And if they are, then I might be offset. And I might have to face off against 2, where the guy on the left going by himself will face no one. And I love that idea. There's something really ingenious about the idea of going left and going, fuck, there's nobody here. And then you're talking to your friend going, dude, there's nobody. Because to me, it's always like enemy, enemy, enemy. But I think there's something magical about playing with somebody else and going, there's fucking no one over here. They have to be over where you are. And then the panic that sets in with the person who's going, fuck, I didn't realize I'd be against 2 people. And then your moment to shine or possibly not shine, which I think a lot of people will show. I love it. I think those are all really interesting changes. They're not necessarily massive ones, but they cause me to be interested.
I'll say I feel like I like what you talk about, the whole like I've gone over here and there's no one, so clearly that means the rest of the map looks this way.
Yeah.
I feel like the older games back in like the Modern Warfare kind of 2 era, which was just a great time for Call of Duty. I feel like those maps and like the pace of gameplay and those maps were designed in such a way that even in the, I can't remember if it was 5-on-5 or 6, I have no idea what the team sizes were back then, but I feel like I ran into situations like that a lot more. 6v6, okay.
Yeah, where you did run into it more back then.
Yeah, there was something about the just the old school, old school 2007. It just the way that felt at that time. And even though I've stuck with Call of Duty and liked most of the games throughout the years, I do think there's something about, and I couldn't even put my finger on it, but there's something about how it's changed and evolved, how they've designed maps and given new powers and taken powers away. And the way it feels, even though it's still very fun, it doesn't achieve that. They have such a secret sauce with the first Modern Warfares and first Black Ops that's just kind of gone away. I feel like over the last few releases.
I think when I think on it, it seems like what those games all offered was. You can't really say this about the second Modern Warfare because that was, while it was fun. That's one thing, but it was really poorly balanced for public matches. I mentioned this in my video, but the one-man army noob tube danger close epidemic was just that was something special, man. There'll never be anything like that again, because that was back when even though patches were a thing, they couldn't just patch that out.
Right.
Like I'm sure people would want nowadays and raise so much hell about it. You see 40,000 articles on it, but. What COD 4 hit and what MW2 at least competitively hit was this balance. It was fun to play in a competitive environment because everything felt as it should be. There was just that special feel to it that only some of the finest shooters have. Whether it's weapon sway when you're aiming, recoil when you're shooting, how the gun looks, like how much of the screen's getting covered when you're sprinting with it, damage penetration when you're shooting through an object, stuff like that you just kind of register in the back of your head, you don't actually think about. I feel those are the things that those types of great shooters bring to the forefront, alongside good map design, where it didn't matter what number of players you had, because you got to think of MW2 as a game that offered probably the most options out of any public match. You had your standard suite of modes, and you had like third person, hardcore, bare bones. It was just like so many different ways to play. But what was crazy is that the maps consistently worked no matter where you were. Obviously, someone would call in the helicopter or the AC-130 and you'd get spawn trapped. That would happen no matter what Call of Duty you're in. But for the most part, when it came to the player encounters, it always just felt right no matter which one you were on. So that's the thing is I feel they've sacrificed looking for that finely tuned shooter because people were screaming about how redundant and repetitive it is that you'd see reaching. And we'd see these like specialists being added, and then specialist streaks and specialist abilities and kill streaks, and it's like, oh my god, now there's so much going on. And this is just my opinion, you'd have a game like MW3, which was just felt incredibly uninspired. There was or Infinite Warfare, which tried something new with this campaign, but multiplayer wise was just a haphazard mess. I hated how there were like disjointed parts of the maps that just because they encourage the wall running and stuff. And
it's literally the only Call of Duty in the past 10 years I haven't played is Infinite Warfare. Only one I was like, I'm taking this off,
man, you got to play the campaign at least.
I'm curious. I am curious.
Battlestar Galactica with Call of Duty is fucking amazing.
It was
admittedly
a cool idea.
Yeah. Well, it's so weird because Maddie's like literally the only person in his entire Discord who dislikes it. Every time I go in there, everybody's your Discord just a couple days ago we're talking
shutting it down.
Yeah, there's a shit ton of people like it, especially the campaign, but the multiplayer was hit or miss. I think one of the things that's interesting about like how these guys do it also is the overlap between the campaign. Do you take skills from the campaign into the multiplayer?
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to me to see the how we graduate from a single player campaign where a lot of people go to sort of crunch the numbers and go like, all right, this gun's recoil is what I want. Because as an Arma fan, this is my favorite probably shooter of all time, Arma Unreal 1999. Like I really like the realistic stuff as long as it doesn't get in the way of whatever the game is trying to do. Yeah. And so a lot of people go into the campaign to figure that shit out, and they're like, okay, I like this gun, I don't. Some people just jump into multiplayer, that's fine too, depends on your skill. But I'm going to be interested to see how they graduate that, because I've been a big fan of like of sort of going into those and experimenting. It'll be interesting to see if you can experiment, how much you can experiment, how much some of those guns, because I also like things unbalanced. I love it unbalanced, actually. I'm a big fan.
That's pretty weird.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because Maximilian Dude just did a huge video about saying that he also like absolutely hates balanced fighters and easier stuff and easier things and everything. I do not like it.
I'm trying to get like what you get out of that. Like I'm not.
You get chaos. You get thought processes. For example, Maddie and I have talked about multiplayer Injustice, though we agree on this that the projectile spamming in Injustice 2 was crazy. When we agree on it. However, here's my thought process. Fuck you, figure it out. And so, I don't believe that it should be unfair, but unbalanced. I absolutely adore going down an alley and getting mowed down and thinking, what the fuck? Like, what did I just walk into? And then going, oh shit, that guy's... Because here's the thing. We can all go quick twitch, and I love quick twitch. I don't think this is going that way. So what I'm hoping for is those moments where you do have to go, okay, that guy's got this gun, or we've all got this gun due to the way the timer thing goes. So it's like, what changes? Like, does something become, like, not unattainable, but I want it to where people have to think outside the box. One of the reasons why, for instance, I really, at starting, I hate it now, but I loved Overwatch at the starting, because it wasn't perfect balance. There was things that were all over the place, and I liked that
I think it's
more
very
than
imbalanced now from what I've heard.
But way more than it was.
Probably
it's
better,
balanced 10 times more than it was. And I liked going, okay, I can't kill this guy one-on-one at all, so I'm going to have to bounce off the wall and do this crazy shit. Or I like that kind of stuff. I love it.
It's interesting, because like for me, fighters, I like when they're balanced. I agree on that entry-level bullshit where you have auto combos, and it's like, but if you're skilled, you can do the... Fuck your auto combos. That's what I always say. Get that shit out of gaming. I think that's awful. But when it comes to shooters, I feel like that needs like a level of balance. The amazing thing about Overwatch. That's I haven't played much modern Overwatch. I played it, I'd say a decent amount of months ago for a little bit, and I had fun. I still had a lot of fun because it still had that strength of. Okay, I haven't played Overwatch in a while, so it was about finding that character that clicked with you and your current playstyle and your current skill level, and that's where the fine-tuning's there that you just can't identify at face value. Yeah, sure, you could pick up some character in the game, I don't know who's currently busted now, and say that is absolutely we'll say Reinhardt, hypothetically. Reinhardt's the most busted character in the game. He doesn't die. He knocks everyone down. He one-hits everybody. Anyone can use him. But, you know, I haven't played Overwatch in a while, so, you know, for as unbalanced as that is, I could hop in, and maybe I'm best with, like, Baptiste or something like that. I don't know. That's what I love about those games. I don't agree, personally, that a shooter being unbalanced is good, because I feel... what makes it better is when it's balanced and it requires team comp. And if a team makes a bunch of picks for all damage, that they could roll you, but if you work, and you know, that's the challenge. That encourages the thought process of, okay, this is not a good team comp. What do we do to counter this right now? I feel like that's what makes...
Well, that's the difference between unbalanced and broken. You're using the word broken, which I'm definitely not. I'm certainly not saying a game should be broken. That would be sort of stupid.
I think
saying that
a
game being unbalanced is not stupid, because guess what? Real life is unbalanced. Fuck off. Fix your shit.
It's true,
Fix your
but
shit. Man up, man. Go out there
and
and figure out a way to work around it. And the team I mean, I get all that, but the thing is I think the reason why we're able to talk about this is because we don't know how they're setting up the player. So if there are moments where you have no team, I don't want things to be mowed down of their irregularities. I mean, that's why, for example, Human's face is perfectly symmetrical, looks fucked up. One of the reasons why Uncanny Valley exists is because developers forget to make both of the sides of the face slightly off, and humans don't like that. Like, we react very poorly to it when it comes visually. What I want is the moments when I want I like it when it always can't be crunched down to numbers. I fucking despise that. I despise it when it's like all about math. I want a little bit of flexibility. I'm not saying broken, but I'm saying a little bit of flexibility where there's some question
like, so you're talking like we'll use the term like a diverse meta. You can pick anybody pretty much, and that person will be viable given your skill set. Is that what you're going for?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I'm all about. Because when you said lack of balance in shooters, I was like, well, hold on.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Well, that's because people considerably always elevate lack of balance into being broken instantly, which I don't believe in any way, shape, or form that is. And I think that when we say balance, it's also a lot of times a lie.
I think there's an argument to be made that being unbalanced for a lot of people and in a lot of situations in games can be broken. There can be times where they're completely separate things, and I think you're right. But there are a lot of times with some games and genres where unbalanced, I think, does veer into broken territory. And I think that a shooter is probably one of those genres. And so I kind of admire what you're trying to get at by being so into the idea of you can't break it down to the exact science and numbers of how the game was designed. It's a little unbalanced, and so that means we have to work against that. To me, I think being interested in that is similar to people who are interested into like breaking games for the sake of finding glitches and finding out how to walk through this map in Kakariko Village in Ocarina of Time to break a thing, because you're like, oh, I'm working against the game's code to find a flaw and exploit that for this reason.
We're talking about completely separate things then.
Well, no. They're separate things, but I think that the appeal in these things to me are
because I fucking hate that beyond all belief. So my appeal, at least, does not overlap with those two for sure. Because that is not for me. What I'm talking about is if we are sitting here saying like I just do not like equality in games at all. I want something to be tougher because it is tougher in a particular circumstance. And what goes on with game developers is you'll hear them say, well, hang on one second. You'll hear them state very clearly, we're trying to make it so that everybody is exactly equal. Guess what? They're fucking not. There are going to be levels where guys are more powerful on a particular level because of the makeup. That's okay.
Right.
That's okay. And the weakness of gamers now is to consistently say, well, I want everything to be perfect. Fuck you. It's not perfect, man. Go out there and figure your shit out, or elevate your skill a little bit.
I would argue that elevating skill when everything is balanced and everyone has a fair playing field is actually the more impressive and admirable skill. Because what you're looking for when you like things to be unbalanced for the sake of saying you should be better because I have an advantage that you don't, it's an artificial challenge. It's not a challenge created by the game designers or their intent. And so while there's nothing inherently wrong with you enjoying that, I think that's totally fine because there are plenty of unbalanced games for you to take advantage of that in. I just see it, like I said, as an artificial challenge. So the more balanced a fighting game or shooter game can be, I think the better the design is, the better the product. And when two people on a level playing field are good and they're going at it, that's more impressive to me than the guy who's winning because he has some sort of, I don't know, unbalanced thing that allows him to be better. Like Star Fox was too overbalanced in Melee, and so that was a huge thing in the Smash community. And I would agree with that. That was a problem, and that was something that needed to be fixed because suddenly the experience wasn't even for everybody.
See, that to me is completely useless. If you have two people who are exactly the same all the fucking time, that is redundant. That is
I think
asinine. But if you have, hang on one second. If you have a situation where you said, you know, it's more cool to see two people at exactly the whatever and one do better, cool. But guess what? It's even cooler to see somebody who has a disadvantage and win. And the thing that's going on is every single game is starting to neuter us.
I totally agree. When the game developers say we want to design advantages and disadvantages because that's the purpose of the experience, totally get it. But an unbalanced game, any developer is going to tell you that's not what they meant to do. This is an accident.
No, you're talking about a broken game.
No, then why do they fix unbalanced games? They fix unbalanced games because it's not the design.
What's the difference between broken and unbalanced to both of you then?
Broken is exactly what he's saying. I'm talking about unbalanced as in the designers do not perfectly balance everything.
So you're saying, when you say unbalanced, you mean, okay, we'll say, I'm going to take Dragon Ball FighterZ. This is just hypothetical for those of you who grind the game, but let's say Trunks is better than Goku Black. And the developers know that when creating the character. That doesn't make it broken. They're just saying this character is better than this one.
In a particular situation.
In a situation. Okay, because then because the reason
I
want to know...
Especially for shooters.
Is because the way I look at it is... I play a lot... I'll stay on Dragon Ball, I guess. I play a lot of the Dragon Ball Super card game. And what the game's kind of started to turn into, and I don't know if I like it as much... I still love the game, but I'm saying I don't know if I like this change as much, is when you start to have so many options that are good in certain situations, what you have is a game that becomes, do you have the right answer at the right time in the right moment? Like that, and that becomes a little frustrating because it doesn't boil down to, I don't want to say it doesn't boil down to skill, but then it just boils down to, you know, is your timing okay? Like, do you have exactly what you need in that very moment? And then it feels almost luck-based. Because what's happening in that game is pretty much there are things called counterplay cards. So when you play something, someone can tap their energy and drop a card on their side of the field that can maybe just flat out wipe out what you played. And there's no way to get around that. And there's no way to stop that counterplay now. That card got banned. So what happens is, are you just lucky that the turn you're making a big play, someone didn't have a counterplay? And when I incorporate that into shooters, it's just about that. Does it become a game of, or a fighter? Do you have that answer at the right time? Is what it kind of becomes.
Well, then that sounds like that's based on just your skill at that game, right? Like, are you good at this fighter so that you can counteract what the other person is doing? And that's
shut up, dog. Sorry.
That's based on that's okay. That's based on the individual.
Talk to Rob
person.
like that.
I mean, I could, hey. But yeah, I think that's a situation where it's based on your skill in this game at this fighter and the other person's skill at this game at this fighter.
Okay.
And like a great example that kind of feeds into this, like using Dragon Ball FighterZ, like you mentioned, to me, balancing is saying, okay, this person is Super Saiyan Vegeta and this person is Yamcha. in the canon of Dragon Ball, those are two unbalanced motherfuckers. There is no balance between the two of them. When they designed that video game, they each deal the same damage with their punch. They each deal the same damage with their ki blast because they are balanced so that people don't want to not play as Yamcha simply because in a real Dragon Ball setting, he would get devastated by everybody, or Krillin, or whoever other character you want to use.
Yeah, right.
They balance a fighter game, if we're using that genre here, in such a way so that the playing field is level, so that if you as Yamcha are better at Dragon Ball FighterZ than that guy is playing as Vegeta, you've got a chance. That guy's not going to beat you just because he picked the unbalanced better character. Again, in video game form, in story form, you can't take like the actual lore and apply it to that because that wouldn't be that way in the show. But that's the kind of balance where it's like, I'm going to appreciate the guy who's just the better fighter, as opposed to the guy who Vegeta's designed to be 7 times more powerful than Yamcha. So every time that guy playing Vegeta beats this guy playing Yamcha, he's not impressive. He's not impressive. Like it's not balanced to be so. And I would argue that if the game was designed that way and the developers went out of their way to fix that, they would say, man, we didn't mean to make Yamcha so piss poor. We wanted him to be an even fighter so that you don't feel like you're at a disadvantage by picking him. Or The other way would be the game designer said, we do want that. We want to go so pixel perfect and canon perfect that is the interesting nuance to Dragon Ball FighterZ, is you have to work against them. Then it's not a matter of balance or imbalance. That's a matter of the game's design. But clearly they went for balance because as Yamcha or Krillin, you can beat Goku or Cell or whoever those characters are. So that's where I look at the difference between balanced, unbalanced, and broken.
Gotcha.
If that kind of makes sense. The Dragon Ball thing was like a really good example.
Yeah, it really was. We're making great use of that.
Yeah, because of like the story canon elements to it. So and again, I'll say what I said before. I don't think being interested or entertained by working with the imbalance of games is a bad thing. That's great. That was the reason of the comparison of people who like to break games code to do that stuff. It's interesting to work against what the game is trying to have you do. So that's cool. But I'm just saying, for me, I don't like that. And I think when a game is balanced, it's a better made game and the experience is more fun for most players. When like
I think the problem is that, again, I'm talking about nuance and you guys are talking more extremes. Instantly broken, instantly balanced. I'm not talking about that. Once again, I'm talking about, let's say your exact example where you get two characters and you level them down so that one guy's got, let's say, the same punch as somebody else. There is nothing wrong in a game with having a character who can take advantage of a particular stage or a particular location in a shooter in particular is sort of what I'm talking about too. Because the shooter's 3D, which most 2D fighters, there's an entire plane missing. I want that. I want that bit of chaos. And I'm not talking broken chaos. I'm talking a little bit, though. And when we have developers on the podcast, like they yearn for that. Like, in fact, I think that's one of the problems.
That surprise factor, like,
and
I don't know how to word it. Like, you could use Fortnite even as an example. Someone has more brick and a rocket launcher, and they can take advantage of that situation. Is that sort of what you're looking at?
So I think the nuance gets lost because of the wording. If we want to come up with a word between broken and balanced, you could too. Bloken, which is like half broken, half balanced. But because I'm certainly not saying I want anything broken. That would fucking suck. But what I mean is that moment of chaos, especially on a 3D thing with 3D playing and all this crazy stuff. For example, you'll get a lot of developers who are like, we've balanced our map perfectly on both sides, and I'm like, fuck. It doesn't have to be balanced perfectly on both sides. You could do a verticality element on one side and a horizontal on the other. And when we had the guys from Ashen on, they were talking about just this. They were talking about, like, how do you balance? You don't want to balance too much because you'll neuter any feel to the game. And that, I think, is what does happen, especially when a game's around for a long time. You'll get that weird shit that starts to pop up where you start to go into the game and you're like, where's the moment of, I don't know, the tingle? And the tingle is gone because they've taken a lawnmower to everything.
Right.
And they've made everything exact. And I personally would like a little bit more. So when I say unbalanced, take that down a notch to un. I would just like it a little just a tiny
unbalanced,
bit.
not balanced.
Yeah, so that there's something there. Also, but admittedly, I play Arma, which is considerably, I guess you would say, especially against good AI, is almost unbalanced because it's so nut-crunchingly difficult. And I love that. I do want to die 500 times and try to figure out how do I climb up this hill. That only works in Arma. It wouldn't work in COD. But the thing about this COD that interests me is that they are going a little bit more towards, let's say, Siege. And I like that because I think that introduces a little bit more. But again, I admit I'm not a big Call of Duty fan where it's all Twitch either. So this might be speaking to the wrong crowd too. You know, some crowd may just want it, and I sort of like it where there's like, what do we do?
That moment
also,
of thought,
also I like to talk to each other. And I think when everything's balanced, sometimes that goes away. I sort of want that moment of fear. I like that in a game where you're like, I'm fucking against the world over here. And everybody's like running to you. But I don't know. I mean, I guess the word's wrong. I don't know. Like, we can change what I use, but it's like, I don't want it balanced, that's for sure, for everything. I just want a little chaos.
It's tricky because I think the way you break it down, like, and again, we might just have different definitions here, but that doesn't sound like a balance or an imbalance kind of thing. It really sounds like game design. Like, there's just a way
it is.
like
It for sure is. I mean, when we talk to them, that's what they say.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, and you get a lot of like organic variables in what your game experience can be when you have that stuff. And so when you talk about I want a little chaos, that's what I hear is like, I'm like, oh, that's like an organic variable that just happens because humans make these things and they design things in different ways. And sometimes mistakes happen and they patch things later, whatever. But ultimately, it's an organic experience. And so,
and I would like developers to take less of that out. Or,
sure.
Yeah, less of that out, because a lot of them like to mow it down, and that becomes so uncomfortable at times. But again, I also don't know. You guys may do this. I don't play. Let's say if I like a fighting game, I'll return to it occasionally, but I don't get a chance to do multiplayer for years on end. Like some people are still playing Street Fighter 2. So like Injustice. So like Injustice 1 or 2. Which one was it that you had the problem with the spam?
1.
Okay, so 1, it'd be interesting to return to it, if anybody is, and find out if they've done anything to that. Because by the way, I was teasing Matty when I said he needs to get better on that one. We agree. The projectile spamming on that's ridiculous.
I don't care, even if you were serious.
Yeah. No, I wasn't. I do. Yeah, I like that. And I think unfortunately it feels like everything's going the route of mowing differences down, and I'm not 100% sure. Well, maybe not every game, but I would like some games to know.
I feel like I fill that void in like tabletop stuff where you can just use every aspect as like a tool to your advantage, and get creative with it. And
do you do board games, Rob?
I wish not as often as I want. My girlfriend is actually playing a D&D campaign with some of our friends.
D&D's awesome.
Yeah, we're from Denver, so all of our friends are back in Denver, and she gets to play with them once a week. And if I wasn't so busy, I would do that with them. But I do love them. I mean, I grew up playing Hero Quest and D&D and all the pen and paper stuff, man.
Hero Quest is the shit.
Love it. Oh man, we'd have that going for weeks on end. It was so great, great.
Yeah,
Hero Quest is one of the greatest, especially for like the branch between D&D and board games. It's a cool little mini or like
miniature thing.
And so I did the same thing where you get somebody who maybe doesn't want to do D&D or at least doesn't know what it is, and you're like, well, play this, and then we'll see from there.
Yeah, it's like
where you want to go.
Softer barrier for entry because it's not as hardcore. It's like you could play Octopath Traveler, or you could play like the most hardcore like Final Fantasy crazy shit, And it's like it's just a nice little step into that world. So,
right on. Okay. Well, let's move on to what we're playing right now. We're all gaming out there. Karak, you mentioned some reviews. Rob, what are you playing? What's going on, everybody? Let's get that one started.
Yeah, go ahead, Karak. I went first last time.
What is it called? Dragon Quest Builders.
Mm-hmm. I bought that last night because I've been you weren't there. When during the Twitch stream, I lost my shit when that game got like a full gameplay trailer, and I was like watching it, and I said, you know what? This looks like a game that's gonna scratch the right fucking itch I've had forever. It feels like, and so because I've been looking for that Switch game that lets you farm and build stuff and create a town and go questing and fight stuff, and I just couldn't find it anywhere. Like I said, emphasis on the Switch. Like there was a Harvest Moon game, but it reviewed horribly. Rune Factory is something that's in development, but it's not out. So I've been looking forward to this game forever. I can't wait to start. But you said you've put 60 hours in?
Yeah, about 62. I was looking while we were talking. So, okay. Understand. I want to preface everything here with a Persona comment real quick. Everybody should realize I hated Morgana in Persona. I hated that cat. That fucking cat could burn to death. I hated the continual stopping of gameplay. And Dragon Quest easily trumps that by 10,000%. And I was telling my wife, I have never wanted to cry at a game. I don't get emotionally that verklempt when I'm playing a title. I actually was I was so stressed out by wanting to just play the game, and the game wouldn't allow me, that I was actually walking and leaving the PS4 to run its text while I would walk away, and I would come back because I was so mad. The game stops you.
It was stopping you from being able to play the game?
Yes. It
like for story moments? And
it's all text. So you just sit there and go like this. And then, as Reg in my podcast said, we don't know why it does this. I thought my PS4 was borked, so I installed it on the PS4. It will pause for huge amounts of time. So you'll be doing a quest and it'll be like, quest completed, pause.
I'm confused.
Then you'll start going like, yeah. And so Reg is like, I sat there hammering my PS4 controller going, I froze, and then it'd be like, and it'd be all, next part. It pauses to tell you the quest is done only in the same exact moment of text to give you another quest. So you were sitting there just going like, are you kidding me?
Is that Dragon Quest 11? Is that what game that is?
This is Dragon Quest Builders 2.
Oh, it's the Builders. Okay.
Yeah. All that doesn't stop me from liking the game. But I'm very disappointed that more reviews didn't poke on this, because I think a lot of people are going to get into it and think, what is happening right now? Like, and I am not exaggerating. We had multiple people on our podcast who had played it, and once I mentioned it, every single person there was like, yeah, what is going on with this? So what it'll do is, it'll say you need to build a tree. You'll be like, okay, no problem. And then it'll say, go get leaves. It's at the far north side of the continent. So you run all the way to the north, or you teleport to various places, and then you grab it and you'll return it. They'll be like, okay, great, we're ready. Oh, no, we're not. You need to get acorns. Those are at the far south part, or the far east part. So then you go there and you return it. They'll be like, great, we're ready. Oh, no, we're not. You need water. Go to the far west point. And you'll go, okay. And for one build in particular, it was 12 different pieces where that happened. And it hurts itself. I don't even hate the game for it. It hurts itself because it so often interrupts what could have been a build, because I'm a Minecraft freak. Like, I love Minecraft, and I love this.
Drop you in and let you build. I didn't expect that, but it's pretty extreme.
Yeah, it's way more than I was expecting.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy enough that you'll sail to, or you'll get this weird screen where there's a story plot. I don't want to ruin it, but it'll be like there's a story plot, and it will freeze for 45 to 50 seconds, and you're like, oh, it's loading, and then it'll go loading, and it'll start the loading screen, and I'm like, what is happening behind the scenes with these? And they're unskippable. They're all unskippable. All text is unskippable.
So for like
you
40
can
seconds,
speed it.
You just stare at like a
You're staring
screen.
at one sentence. It'll be a black screen, and it'll be like, I have come for you.
You're like, to do what?
To do what? Yeah, and you're hitting this button going, what is happening right now? And then finally, it'll go past this. And the entire tutorial area took me about 8 hours, 9 hours, is all this, the entire time. So I was like, okay, it must be the tutorial area. Maybe this is a JRPG thing. I have pretty good experience with them.
JRPGs are notoriously slow in the beginning. Yeah.
They're notorious. Yep. So then I got past that point, and I went to the main hub. This is where you can build your own stuff, and then also travel to other people's islands, as well as further the story. And it did it there. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm going to not ignore it. I'll note it in the review for sure. But I'm not going to hate the game for that, even though I've never been this stressed. Because you know me, I don't have that patience when it's like, if the text is done, I expect to hit X and have it be
I think anyone in their right mind would expect that.
So it didn't do that. And then it has the best build, dude. It's so gratifying to put shit in a chest and then put a blueprint down and they build it for you. There's something so cool. But guess what? They don't do the roof. So you're like, they build the room. So, okay, so I got to do the roof. So then you put the roof on everything, and you put the tiles down. You're like, okay, that's odd, but I can ignore it. But then there's the battle is just one button.
Right.
Or a power attack. So you're like, all right. The problem is it's got a dichotomy there. It's a complex system to get it moving, but a very simple system when it gets moving. So it's really confusing on what they wanted you to do. And then the performance is woeful. The Switch performance is ungodly bad. Like 15 FPS. Shit. I tracked the PS4 at 9 FPS. If you go to somebody else's city or you build yours too big. So I would warn you guys, if you get this, if anybody's listening, don't go too high. Don't make your places, because I was visiting other people's castles, or whatever you call it, islands, and it was nauseating to the point to where I would move and go, yeah, FPS is not. It's like in the 12s. And I run a software to check what the FPS is, and I count it by hand. So I was like, I'll leave. I still like the game, despite all that. It's still the
sounds
building,
like the design is good, right? Like,
yeah, the design is good. It's just, if you were a Morgana hater like I was, I know Maddie wasn't as bothered as I was by her in Persona.
When I talk about my game, I think some things have changed in my level of patience, so I'll get to it.
Okay.
Go on.
I'll be interested to see what you guys think if either one of you guys get there. Well,
Yeah,
Maddie's got it.
I'll have thoughts. Yeah, I'll have thoughts for sure. I was really looking forward to it.
I think you still should, because I'm warning you. This is what I always tell people. People will post on a review and be like, you bitched about this, but I thought it was okay. And I'm like, you know why? You were warned by me. And that's the way the human brain works. So what I'm telling people is, it's good. Just that happens. So get yourself a drink, get yourself a meal, and when you know that there's a long quest moment, take a bite, hit that button, let it read. You'll probably be fine.
I have to say that whole thing that you describe reminds me of my experience with Devil May Cry 5. I don't know if you guys played that.
Yes,
we did.
So it's a really good game.
Screens.
I more than the loading screens is just how freaking often that game paused to do a quick fade to black, fade into a cinematic. And it's like every time you killed 3 enemies, it did that. And it drove. I don't know a damn thing about the story of that game, because thank God you could skip them. Every time I would defeat a room of enemies, and I knew what was going to happen. I'm going to get the fade, and I'm just start. Yeah,
we had the same exact complaint.
Out. Yeah, it's like, oh my, I don't want to say it almost ruined the game, but it definitely held it back. And so, what you describe about, oh my God,
yeah, that's so that's exactly what happens here. But the building is cool. It doesn't work as well as Minecraft. If you're accustomed to Minecraft, when you make water, it usually flows where it's supposed to. This game had a lot of oddities where like the water would get caught on other water, and so you get this weird graphical anomaly where like 2 types of water. So you got some jankiness.
Here's my question about this game. With a lot of these types of games where the pacing does get in the way, Devil May Cry is one of those examples where by about mission 10 it starts to get self-aware and stop the frequent cutscenes. I feel it still happens, but it definitely doesn't rip the controller out of your hands as often, which is one of those things you mentioned earlier about how like it's surprising reviewers didn't note that. I can't believe for all the action and frantic nature of this game that wasn't mentioned, something that stops all that. But anyway,
I think a lot of people don't really care. No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, I don't know if a lot of people care about that stuff the way we do.
I don't think they do, because for me, pacing, I've realized, has become so important to me. Like, I don't even like review games based off of it, but like my enjoyment of a game is about how things flow. Like, it's just like, can I keep going? Can I keep going? That's why like I love games that are multiplayer lately. I just like signing in and just getting to the game right away.
I have a real quick question. I believe, Maddie, did you notice in Dragon Ball FighterZ the story elements where they go like and you'd hit enter and so it's like that times 100.
Yeah, but like I love Danganronpa and stuff and Persona.
No,
so
I'm saying
Dragon.
Right. I'm just saying in this game it's about like that, but it's like times 100. So if you're okay with it, then you'll be okay with this. See. It's just it happens
on the
more
Switch,
often.
though, so that's the issue.
The Switch performance is abysmal. There's no getting around that part.
Some games lend themselves to those moments a lot better, like an RPG. I mean, and I don't play many RPGs, but really, obviously, story-heavy games are going to lend themselves to that. But that's why, like a game like Devil May Cry is just such a good example here. Like that game is really just more about be a badass and just fuck shit up everywhere you go. So like, I don't need too much context. I just don't need that. But I think most people do, and so that's why it doesn't bother them the same way.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And that's why I think just the warning is enough, because most people will get into it. I mean, admittedly, that opening tutorial is long as fuck, but
9 hours is a long time.
Yeah, well, it took me 9 because I did explore, admittly, like and run around to try to get all the secrets, because there are secrets in that first island.
What my initial question was going to be was, you got 60 hours. Is there a point where it just opens up and it is a little less hand-holding and stop and go, and it's more just build?
Yeah,
quest,
once you stop... once you... Okay, yes. It still continues, but at a lower pace. But those first hours are painful.
Okay.
So, and once you get to your main base and then sort of understand what they're trying to do with it, and it still pauses for every quest. Like, you can't really freeform. There's like a person standing there. Until you do whatever they want to do, you can't move on. The only other thing I would say is there's a lot of glitches. For example, quest givers will be stuck in the ground a lot, or the game will want to do a cutscene of something being destroyed, but you built your shit there, and the game gets almost confused. It'll be like, should I destroy his shit, or should I pretend? So I had a tree. The ending part of the tutorial, I had a tree growing out of the side of my building, and I was supposed to talk to the quest giver, and he was in the building, so I had to destroy my building's wall to get to him, because the game was like, we're going to put this guy for sure right here.
Just Minecraftian things.
Which is Minecraftian, yeah. So overall, though, dude, it sounds, I mean, I don't know what I would rate it. I'm not going to review it because I don't have the time. But I would say that if you played number 1, maybe this happened in number 1. Maybe that's why a lot of people didn't pick on it, but I didn't play number 1. So number 2, it does this a lot. Forewarned. And then the fucking building is awesome, dude. I mean, I saw people, admittedly the FPS was dumping, but I saw people with like fucking full cities, people walking around, like festooned with shit everywhere, lanterns everywhere. It looked really good. That was fun.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and then the other, let's see, the other game I've been playing, Arma. We played a bunch of Arma. I don't know why I'm playing that. I think I just took a break. You
Sometimes
and I talked.
Just games call your name.
Yeah, and then a shit ton. I think I put in my 1,000th hour into Star Trek Online. We all got together and did a fleet and flew around and just blew people up in Star Trek. But most of it was Dragon Ball. Once I got Dragon Ball, I thought I was going to review it, by the way. And then I was like,
you mean Dragon Quest?
Or Dragon Quest. I was at 50 hours. I was level 12 or 13. I was like, yeah, I'm not reviewing this. I was like, I'm nowhere near where I need to be to review this game. It was redonkulously big. And again, I took my time, ran around. You get some cool items and stuff like that. But I don't want to sound overly negative on it, because maybe it's worth it in the long run. I just really feel, like Rob said, that when they stopped that flow, they could have really helped it by not having those weird loadings and fixing some of those issues.
Okay.
Other than that, not really Arma and Star Trek.
All right. Rob, what about you? What have you been playing, man?
So as far as current stuff, I'm actually not playing too many things right now. The only current kind of game I'm playing is Bloodstained, and I've had a very not friendly experience with that game, unfortunately.
Partly because it's sorry, I apologize.
Rob, it's all good. Game? It's Bloodstained.
Bloodstained.
Yeah.
Is that the Castlevania?
You got it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So, I've been having, part of the reason I've been having issues with that game is because the Switch version is just such a nightmare. And part of it is, I think, also the design of the game. The other game I've been spending most of my time on is Monster Hunter World, which is a game that I constantly go back to. And every time I let myself pick that game back up, it's got its hooks in me. And it's been about a month and a half straight for like my 7th round. I finally got myself past Hunter rank 100 a couple of days ago.
Jeez.
And I have almost 300 hours in that game. It's like,
oh my gosh.
It's not my favorite game of all time, but it is probably about to surpass Skyrim as the most hours I've logged in any game.
Nice.
It's unheard of.
Yeah, it is unheard of. And I've played Skyrim on 3 different but most of us have. We've played it on so many platforms, and I fucking love Skyrim. I love it.
Yeah,
but Monster Hunter World, man, are you guys familiar with it? I'm assuming.
Oh, dude,
right?
yeah, I like it a lot.
Okay. Yeah, that game just never gets old for some reason. They found such a balance. I go back about 10 years or so with Monster Hunter 2, so I've been playing a lot of the older games that had a completely different approach. And going into Monster Hunter World, I was like excited and nervous. It's like a 2-year-old game I'm talking about now, but I was definitely nervous and excited at the same time, and I think they just made that game perfect. They struck a good balance. Right. The only problem I have is on my base PS4, the loading time is complete shit, and that is the only negative about that game to me. Because you load a lot in that game. You do a quest, you load back to the hub, you pick your next quest, you load back in. So that's the only thing that still drives me crazy.
Right.
And wasn't that an issue, Rob, also when you did multiplayer? Remember with multiplayer, like, you couldn't watch their cutscene or something? Like,
yeah.
It was something weird like that.
Yeah, and that's still a problem. I don't know if they'll ever fix that. Like if you've already completed a quest and like fought this monster for the first time, but you're now going on a quest with your buddy, which I do a lot, and they have yet to do it, you have to wait for them to start the quest, find the monster, see the cutscene, and then it lets you join the quest. And I mean, when you know what the game is, it kind of makes sense, because if they didn't do that, you would be like running around the world fighting the monster while your friend is actually not doing that, but watching a cutscene instead. They probably could have just done the Halo route where they make everyone watch the same cutscene, but they decided not to do that.
Right.
So it's annoying, but it's just one of those kind of minor flaws in just a game I just goddamn love so much.
So, oh man, you're doing all this and Iceborne's not even out yet, right?
I know, dude. I'm so pumped for free. That was the next thing, is Iceborne. Do you play it, Maddie? Are you pretty?
I have about 90 out. I'm within 70 to 90. I can't remember the exact number, but I'm in that range. I played a lot of it at launch, and it was one of those games. I could have sworn I've said it to Karak a number of times. It was a game that did not call me back, and I don't know why. Like when I saw the Horizon stuff, the Devil May Cry stuff, I think Witcher, just I don't know why either. Especially like the Witcher, like I love the Witcher, man. Like that I thought if anything that would get me, it would be that. I think it's more so knowing. Have you guys ever played a game and you're in the thick of things? You're like one of the higher players, so to speak. And then you stop playing for so long, and you see everyone else playing. You see like how crazy their gear is and stuff, and you know the work that has to go in, especially in a Monster Hunter game, to get all that gear. And you're like, oh, man, like I'm never gonna be that level of Monster Hunter player. It's not even like you want to be the highest ranked. You just want to have better stuff, and almost that artificial workload kind of breaks it down. Where I've gone back. Sometime this year I went back for a couple of fights, and it was still a blast. It's still an amazing game, and I still recommend it to anyone.
The gameplay is so good.
Yeah, and it's very rare you see gameplay that good in a universe so well realized, where it's all multiplayer too. Like you can do 4-player co-op. Karak and I always try to highlight co-op games on this show because they're so infrequent, especially being good. That's even more infrequent. But yeah, Iceborne even isn't really calling my name, and I don't know if it's a time thing for me or just lack of desire. I'm definitely not the biggest Monster Hunter fan, too, though. I just know that. Like, the fact that this game I really liked and put that much time into is like a feat of its own.
90 hours is a lot of time. I mean, that's something.
Yeah, it's just more so I know, like, one of my good friends I play PS4 with a lot has about your hour count 300. You have 300. I feel a lot of people let it get its hooks in them deeper. I've played my share of Monster Hunter style titles. Like I played Freedom Wars on the Vita, Soul Sacrifice. I played Monster Hunter Freedom when I was younger on the PSP. I really liked that game. I've enjoyed Monster Hunter style games. Toukiden. I think it's just I've had a lot of Monster Hunter, especially within the last couple of years, where I didn't need more and more of Worlds. I think a lot of people have been waiting for the pinnacle Monster Hunter game, while I've dabbled in stuff like God Eater 3 is another example. I played that recently, so I haven't had that hankering for a Monster Hunter World, really.
I'll say that the Capcom and this game deserve a lot of credit because, it's one of the few games that has consistently doled out so many updates and new content, all for free. I mean, Iceborne will be the first, new paid-for content that anyone's going to be getting.
And their only one.
Yeah, their only one. It's probably gonna. I don't know what the price is. It's probably $40, maybe like $29 or $39.
I don't know what it is, but they said it's bigger than the base game, and I was like, okay, and they're charging less.
It's significant. Wow. It's significant, and when you look at how so many other games do this, like Destiny games are good examples and stuff. And I actually like the Destiny games, but they obviously didn't treat the monetization of the DLC necessarily the right way. Battlefront 2 only did it because they were busted and forced to do it, but they were probably going to be charging for so much of that shit. And I actually kind of like Battlefront 2, by the way.
Same. It's so good after all these updates.
It really is I tell people, I'm like, man, that game's good. They fucked up at the beginning, but by the time it went on sale to people for money, it was didn't cost anything extra, and it's been great ever since. So I agree with that. But dude, Monster Hunter, they always, Final Fantasy stuff, the Witcher stuff, like you were saying, they've just done so much for that game. So, I do want to touch on Bloodstained just real quick for a minute, though.
Go for it.
Karak, it sounds like you haven't played it, but Maddie, have you played Bloodstained?
I want to, but I know Metroidvania stuff has never been my shtick. I like Mega Man. I like Mega Man X series a ton, but that I know that's nothing like that. But from what I've seen, the pseudo RPG elements kind of speak to me. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's Are you gonna play it, Karak? Are you like even interested in it at all? I'm just.
It's strangely enough, or not strangely enough, because we usually do agree. I agree. I'm the same way as Maddie. I do like some. Ori and the Blind Forest is one of my favorite.
I always
games
forget that. That's an example of one I love.
And it's Maddie's favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about this game. I have no qualms against it, but I think it's also I was never a big Castlevania fan, and the gothic look and everything. I'm just not 100% into. So I probably won't play it. To be fair, I probably won't.
That makes sense. It's a weird situation. I'm sure you guys know all the drama and controversy, and it's one of those unfortunate things where, like, going into the release of the game, Switch version or otherwise, I want it to be like, it can't be as bad as people say. It can't be as bad as people say, and it pretty much is as bad as people say, and you just don't want that to happen. Yeah, it's so unfortunate, man. But the weird thing is that the base game, the design of the game, the gameplay approach, all the RPG mechanics, and the insane variety of weapons and gear is so good, but it is marred by just a really shitty performance. And even though the Switch is like on its own level of shitty performance, there's plenty of documentation on even the Xbox One X and PS4 Pro all having weird levels of performance issues and glitches and bugs, and it's crashed on me twice on the Switch.
I've heard game-breaking bugs.
Yeah, actually, and so that's the thing is, I think I ran into one of those because I was playing to a point that you guys won't have any context to, but I was playing to a point where I know I was stuck, and I know I was stuck because I think the game broke. And there's already one very well publicized game-breaking glitch where you can't progress and people had to start over. I did not run into that one, but I just got to a point where I couldn't progress, and I was like, okay, these games require backtracking, but they're not puzzles. You're not supposed to have to really solve things to move forward. You just find the right rooms to get the right upgrades to move forward.
Right.
It's not really a thinker kind of game. And I scoured the available map for days. I probably wasted 5 hours thinking I'm missing something, and I eventually gave up. I was like, this is bullshit. And I wasn't going to restart it. I was just going to write the game off as a total loss and a piece of shit, even though it was fun. But I actually gave in, and I did restart it, and
I've heard people saying that, so there's got to be something really good there, right? Like, you're the second person I've heard who said, like, I got fucked, and I hated the game, but then the next day I started again. It's fun.
Yeah, that's probably, I think I gave myself a day, but yeah, I definitely was like, I can't say no, I want to try it again. And I'm glad I did, because I've since gotten to, I found the room that actually let me fight a boss that I couldn't do the first time. I don't know what the hell was happening.
Right.
And I've since gotten a little bit farther past where I was, and it's just on the Switch, it's a weird, buggy, ugly kind of mess, but it's just really fun. So you guys aren't big Castlevania fans, it sounds like, so I get the lack of appeal, but it's just a unique case where it's a shitty game, but it's also a really fun game, So,
right. Sounds like fun to play, poorly made, almost.
Yeah, I mean, it's crowdfunded, and they have promised plenty of patches, and so hopefully that continues to happen.
Okay. All right. Good. On my end, I've just been having that, like, I've heard a term used, like a gamer ADD. Like, I've just been all over the place, like, just, anything that calls my name, because it's the summer, and this is my time to embrace that, how I normally game, just what's calling my name now, I'll beat that later, kind of thing. And just because when the fall hits, that's where it's review time, and you got to just focus on one game, another game, and it's like very structured. So I like to have just all the options. So I finally beat Devil May Cry 5. I was in my second playthrough. I'm about halfway through that. I don't know if I'll finish it because I've kind of gotten a good taste of it now. I gotta say the game is awesome, but I kind of vented my frustrations earlier for it, so I won't stay on that too long. I really couldn't stand the amount of stop and go, especially the second time through. You're just like, why? But I did appreciate some of the foreshadowing in that game. I think foreshadowing is a really underrated narrative tool that because it makes it kind of fun to go back a second time and see like all the little things they were hinting at. Even if the narrative wasn't like amazing, but it's kind of like what I said with Rage. Like if you're going into Rage or Devil May Cry 5 and you're like, where's the great story? It's like, you're not here for the right reasons, and I will never ever play either of those series to have a good narrative delivered to me. I still, it's up in my top 5 right now. I think Rage 2 is still, I know for a fact, my game of the year. I think that that is, I just had a marvelous time with that. It was so much fun. I preferred the pacing to others. Some people wanted that nonstop action. We were talking about pacing a lot. But that game, I just love how it was really fast, and then, like, you took a moment to, like, breathe, explore the rest of the area, explore the world, and then go in, and, like, action picks up again. It hit the right spot for me. So that's why I think it really outranks a game, Devil May Cry, that, like, its combat depth, its music. I mean, I fight over these two all the time on which one could fight for a Game of the Year spot, but I know for a fact DMC5 will sit in the top 5 right now. Nice. What I've also been playing, though, is I'm about 10 hours into Persona Q2. That's why I got my DS over here. And I was mentioning, I was doing a little foreshadowing earlier, and I was saying to Karak how I may not be as big of a fan of Morgana as I once thought I was. So this is, for those who don't know, it's a spin-off Persona series. Persona is one of my favorite series of all time, so I thought getting into the spin-off dungeon-crawling, chibi-style RPG, which is the Q series, would be good. And in the Q series, you have the Persona 5 cast, and they cross over with the 4 and 3 cast, and so you get a lot of fan service. These RPGs are kind of based off like Etrian Odyssey, I think it is, like that first-person cell crawling kind of dungeon where you can only turn like 4 ways, and they're really notoriously difficult. And while I didn't mind the difficulty, there were times it was like bang your head against the wall difficult. The whole first 9 hours was really well done in the terms of gameplay difficulty. We'll stay on that for a sec before I get into its awful pacing, which is going to be basically me repeating myself. But the gameplay difficulty was just right. You had to focus up for every battle, but it wasn't like it was stomping you. And then you get to the boss, and it's like you're getting hit by a fucking freight train every time this guy lands a hit on you. And you're like, what the hell? So I lead the boss. I'm like, okay, let me go level up. I level up 4 times. I'm level 14 for this boss. And mind you, I took it on when I was level 10, which seemed right, because given the mob enemies I was fighting in the dungeon, I was, cleaning them up pretty easily at that time. So you imagine by level 14, you gotta be good to go. And so I go back, I do the boss fight. He hits me again, 100, like, you have 100 health, or 115 health, depending on, like, what your character stats are. 115 damage first hit, and you're like, that guy's almost fucking dead already. And, like, they give you 1 healing item, and that healing item heals 30 HP, and even if you use a support skill, that heals, like, another 10. So you're not plussing anywhere. You're just constantly getting beat down. So I'm like, all right, I'll cave in. Here we go. Go down to easy, and that's where it became manageable, but then you get to the mob enemies, and those are too easy now. It's just, like, a frustrating experience, and they borrow gameplay elements from Persona 5. Rob, have you played Persona 5?
No, I'm not a huge JRPG guy.
Okay.
I know it's a great game, but I've not dived in.
Okay,
yet.
I just wanted to make sure, because there's this mechanic in Persona 5 known as baton passing, where pretty much in Persona you target like Pokemon, you target the weakness of the enemy, and it does like bonus damage. Except in Persona, you can do, once you hit that bonus damage, you can do a thing called the baton pass, where you pass your bonus to another person, and then they can go, and you can keep exploiting that weakness, and
like a chain kind of.
Yeah, and it gives fights momentum. It empowers you as you play. It makes it a lot more fun. It speeds up battles. And so I mentioned like support skills earlier, and this game has a support bar. So as you take damage or deal damage, this thing fills up, and it fills up at least at the 10-hour, 11-hour, or 12-hour mark. Sorry, it fills up incredibly slow. And mind you, I want to make sure for those who have played and beat it, that's what I'm talking about right now. And so baton passes in Persona 5 were originally just you press a trigger, you pick a teammate, you pass the baton, and they get the bonus, and it's their turn now. In this one, though, it cost 2 support skill out of the 5 points you have, and with how slow it passes, it becomes this careful decision you have to make. That it's not in the fun way. It feels like the fun of Persona 5's combat that could have been put into this game as well, almost got neutered, and then. The narrative pacing is just awful, and I know JRPGs are notoriously slow, and I love Persona, so I was more than patient. But your first hour is just dialogue. You finally get in, they pull you out, and when I say get in, you get into the dungeon, They pull you out within like 15 minutes. You get back in. They pull you out in like 30 minutes. And you get in. They pull you out. Like, it is like bang, 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 bang. Like, constantly in and out. No flow at all until probably the 7-hour mark. You're finally in, good to go, and roaming around the cell. And then even then, they're like, stop. There's a foe there, which is like this special type of enemy that roams the dungeon and can like really just mess your shit up. So, if you guys can tell, I got some issues with this game. And I needed to get it off my chest.
Yeah.
Because I totally expected to like it. At least like it. I didn't expect to love it because I knew it wasn't going to be the Persona that I've played hundreds and hundreds of hours of and loved to death. I was ready for something different. I was ready for something challenging, but it's hitting in all the wrong spots. It really
Aren't there a few Persona spin-offs on the
and that's the other thing.
3DS?
Yeah, I love the Persona spin-offs. Like, there is a dancing game series, which is actually surprisingly really good. There is a fighting series, the Arena games, which is really good. And there was the first queue on the original DS, or was it the 3DS? I'm not sure, but
I think it was 3DS, but I could be wrong.
I think it was 3DS. And I never played that, not because I didn't want to, but because I just didn't have time. And then I saw Q2, and they were saying, oh, you don't need to play Q1 to understand Q2. And so the other thing, man, is somewhat like the first dungeon's inspired. You know, it borrows heavily from 5 in a way that makes you intrigued. It uses a villain that's like really a tone setter for the game. So to see him again, it was like, whoa. And then the second one is just not as good. Like I said, just pacing, man. It kills this game. Like, I'm being honest when I say I don't even know if I'm going to finish it. I have no desire to right now. I'd rather just, pick up my Game Boy now and try out some other games that I missed while I was a kid, or keep chipping away at Smite because I just love playing that game. It's just not... It's not holding my attention. And with the Dragon Quest Builders as well, I was really excited for that. I'm probably going to divert my attention that way.
Time to go back to Fallout 4.
I already did that and got the Platinum Trophy.
Nice. That's another game I go back and visit and always gets my hooks back in.
Yeah, I don't know what it is either, because it's definitely not my favorite. It's a great game, I think, but it's just like Fallout 3 it hooks in me big time. But Fallout 4...
Is it 3 for you? I was wondering, because I know you're a huge Fallout
fan,
as I am too. Is 3 the one for you?
3 is absolutely the one for me. I mean, because I create so much Fallout content, I argue with the objective side of myself, who's like, yeah, but New Vegas has like all these great options. But I'm like, dude, 3 just speaks to me in every fucking way, like atmospherically, character-wise, world-wise, quest-wise. Oh, I dropped my pen. It's just everything. Oof, man, it is just a great game. So, yeah, I miss that game, and I hope that they do like an HD like up it remake or something along those lines.
I mean, that's a series that, even though Todd Howard said they're not, that is one that would be great on the Switch. Oh my gosh,
God. I wish.
I can't. And Skyrim was it was a mostly good port. There are some issues, but it was a good port, and it's just so fun on the Switch, and it sold so well. Like, why would they deny? They brought.
I think
Fallout
it's just
Shelter.
because it's that different engine, and they've talked about the engine for Fallout 4 just being, or Fallout 3. Sorry.
Is it that different from Skyrim?
Yeah, they both have. Well, Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 as well both have some changes. I don't think they're impossible.
It's an updated version of the creation engine.
It's and I think they probably just added something in there that they're maybe for whatever reason they look at it and go, oh, we can't hit whatever we want or something. But I would love. Yeah, we've talked about this, like Maddie and I. Fallout 3 would be awesome on the Switch. I don't know why. I don't know. I'm assuming it is
for a Fallout collection on
right.
I think they'll do it eventually, and like I think that knowing the engine is that different from Skyrim, that probably is part of the reason. I thought they were all the same engine because they look and feel the same.
But they technically are. They're just like it's an updated.
They're just
version.
updated,
yeah. But I mean, at this point, we're seeing the fact that the Switch can play games like Doom and Mortal Kombat. So I'm sure that it's got Fallout clearly. I mean, it's got Baldur's Gate. Yeah. So I just have to feel like some point they would do that. That would become the new game I would have put the most time into, man, if I got Fallout 3 or 4, because I think that Fallout 3 is the better game in its time than Fallout 4 was in its time.
Yeah.
And I adore 3, but I do probably still have more fun going back to 4, and probably just because it's that much more modern. But just give me any, and I like New Vegas too, although it's probably at the bottom of those 3 for me. I would just like any of them or a collection.
or whatever.
Yeah. So they're all good, glitches and all. I don't care that those games are glitchy, man. They're so fun.
Yeah,
I just love, and that's so that we talked about like the context and story and stuff, and I think in my older age, I've just gotten to the point where I care less about story in games, and so I just right. I mean,
I have less patience with it. I still care a lot. If it doesn't if in that first couple hours I'm just sitting there like, okay, why am I supposed to care? I instantly it just gets downgrade. Like I downplay it a lot more.
Here's what changed it for me, and I'm curious if you guys have any kind of similar opinions here. The way Naughty Dog does story in games really changed it for me, because there is so much dialogue and narrative and character growth that happens during gameplay, on top of the occasional cutscene as well. And I mean, even regardless of the fact that their storytelling is really just a cut above pretty much everyone else, even if their storytelling was just average, the way it's immersed and integrated into the game experience and the gameplay, so good that it's just now the bar that I hold the games to. So when I play a Devil May Cry 5, and every 13 seconds it has to fade to black to give me a cutscene just to see them walk from A to B and say something, it's like, I don't need that. You could have let me control the characters still in the game while they talked to each other. So that's kind of where I've gotten to. And so when I look at a game like Fallout, you get past the first 2 hours, you're just in a big ass world, man. Just walk and find things and do stuff, and that works so much for me.
Because there's small, like little intermittent stories scattered in those locations you're exploring. It's I shared pretty much the same opinion. Especially for me, the game that kind of did it, I'd say, is probably BioShock.
I'll be right back.
That's up there.
No problem.
Okay.
Just that in between storytelling, going from that fleshed out the world a little bit in a way that didn't make me stop. Sometimes I would stop just to intently listen to like whether I'm playing Infinite or 1 or 2. But that's just my own choice. But you know, like it could let you listen, walk around, keep exploring, let that flow.
So good, yeah.
Maintain, yeah. And so for me, I also feel like though games like Persona 4, it's top 3 game of all time for me. I adore it, and
Persona 4, not 5.
4,
Persona 4.
4, yeah, okay. I like 4 more than 5, because you know both games have this feature where you know you have the social links and you can sit down and get to know these people in these like special conversations, and it's very much like a separate part of the game. You know, I've played games like Danganronpa. I don't know if you've heard of this series, but
I've heard of it, but I don't really know anything other than the title.
It is. Oh man, I love it, but it is just text. But the writing is so good that it just keeps it going.
Are you a Fire Emblem fan? Have you played Fire Emblem? Because it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I like Fire Emblem. My first delve into Fire Emblem was technically it was one on the Wii, but I played it at a friend's house. But my first actual I played it, I got it, I played it, I beat it was Awakening. That was with Chrom, right?
Yep. Yeah, that was that was the game changer for that franchise. That pushed it into the limelight.
It was because of the difficulty, and it didn't have permadeath. But I think with 3 houses, because I'm seeing a lot of Persona elements there, and I'm seeing the 3 paths you can take, and then you're the professor. That game is really, oh man, I think that's going to be a dangerous game for me, and I'm going to try that one with permadeath. I'm going to see if I can handle it.
What game?
3
Fire
houses.
Emblem, 3 houses.
Oh, gotcha.
And it sounds like the way you described that stuff that you liked, Maddie, that game will do that, because it seems like they're blending things a lot more with 3 houses, but traditionally with the last few Fire Emblem games, it almost is like 2 different game experiences, like you talked about with Persona.
Yeah, I played Conquest and Birthright as well.
Yeah, so all the character relationship building and all that stuff that you do, that literally feels like a totally different game and mechanic than when you're just on the battlefield fighting.
Yeah. And the fact that like the gameplay ties into that relationship building, I don't know. It depends how the systems like integrate. That's I'm a lot more patient and interested when the gameplay builds something for the story. In the case of Fire Emblem, like you're fighting with like this guy and this girl, or in the case of Fire Emblem, you could do this guy and this guy, or this girl and this girl, and they can like build a relationship together, and you can see what happens there. I really like that about those games, so that's why you want to get into the combat, because it's not only fun gameplay-wise, but there's a story payoff and a character growth there. So, yeah, it really depends on the series, ultimately. All right, we are at 2 hours now. We still have a news section and patron questions. Do we want to continue with our last bit of news, or do we want to just do it all?
Oh, I'm good for everything.
I've got about half an hour, so whatever.
Okay.
If that works, I hate to be that guy.
No,
but
you are fine.
Fine.
This would be one of our longest
We have a
episodes.
tendency to go long. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
I
cut out the news.
I want to, but
you have no reason to explain yourself, man. This is one of our longest episodes. Cool. And that's a good thing. That means that you're a great guest.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, sweet. Oh, I'm having a blast. Yeah, so.
Perfect. Let me grab all the questions from our Discord. For those who don't know, if you want to go ahead and I forgot to say this in the beginning. How did I forget this in the intro? If you could flick a buck, you could be a part of the patron questions as well. We have a whole section in the Discord. Great community there. I tag a message right before we record. For those who are at their phones or computers, they drop the questions in. But it's become a thing now where we have just people dumping questions in constantly. So let's start off with Black Dow, who says, when do you guys think the next generation of consoles will release? I'm going to say fall next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think it's probably more 2021. I think that's when I'm feeling
you think like spring 2021?
I mean, next year is incredibly likely, so it's kind of a matter of I could see it going either way. Mm-hmm. And if I was to just come down on one side or another, I don't know why I feel like they might still go one more year. Especially if I think that next year we might see them revealed, but they might shoot for sometime in 2021. So, yeah. Tough to say. I mean, PS4 sales are still going strong. Xbox One sales, not so much. Although, what am I talking about? We're totally forgetting the fact that Microsoft confirmed holiday for Xbox Scarlet.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. Totally, my bad. Yeah, and maybe he forgot that when he asked that question, too.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's go with 2020, since that's...
We all, I guess, collectively forgot for a sec.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting next. I think November, right? Did he say November, or maybe not?
They didn't say the month.
Okay.
Let's see here. This would be a great question for Karak. Why do Sony and Microsoft continue to exclusively use AMD GPUs and CPUs for their consoles? Why not Intel/Nvidia? I'd be curious to your answer on that. I don't know if it's just a pricing thing, a partnership thing.
For Microsoft, it's their deal with the Xbox. I mean, the Xbox original was doing okay, and they canceled it purely due to Nvidia's horrible licensing costs. It was costing them more money to make the console and it's why Xbox original aren't backwards compatible. It's not only that it was a different style, it was a PPC chip versus a 64, but it was also because of their IP licensing, and they're trying to figure out the hardware. Also, the reason why they went with AMD this time, or last time, was because of they wanted a power draw that was, there's a certain number in the United States that under a certain power draw can be considered a TV appliance versus a home console PC. So they got APUs, which are the CPU and the APU or the GPU built on the same one, and they're pretty powerful, to be honest.
Right.
I mean, they're not so bad. So it was easy for them to make the decision to go with less power. And it's cheaper, too, because when they make a wafer, they make a certain number of CPUs, and they test them. Some fail. But if you just have one system on a wafer, you're able to make wafers, test them, fail them, cut them out, get the good wafers out, and not worry about two parts you have to fucking solder together, which was, issues in the past system. So, and cheap, man. AMD's power to wattage is pretty good, so it keeps a nice, cool system, but at the same time allows for a good amount of power, which the Xbox 360 could not do, as we know by the red ring.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Oh, by the way, first question was from Black Dow. Second question was from Johnsonville. I apologize for not name dropping. I know we all love that. YouTuber-centric question here. No Neil 1992 says, so YouTube has a feature where you can basically watch a video while scrolling through the recommended list with no sound on and some sort of generated subtitles, which I don't know if he's talking about mobile, where you can like slide down and like scroll through like your search bar or whatever, and plan out what you're gonna watch next. He says, I've noticed that ads don't play in this feature. 1, does watching a video this way count as a view? 2, seeing as there's no ads, I would guess that also means there's no ad revenue gain. Just curious how this feature may be negatively impacting creators, if at all. So I think the view would still count because you're clicking on it and it is like
View counts,
registering.
correct.
I know YouTube, I think they originally used to do like you had to watch a certain amount before it became a view, but I'm sure that was just like too much number crunching before they were like, all right, you clicked, it's a view.
Yeah.
As for the ad, it depends what kind, because the creator has some control on if it's like it like has to play in the beginning. If there's a mid roll, yes. And if it's just like sometimes YouTube has, if you're on like your PC, they'll have like a little ad on the top right corner of the screen, and nothing will play in the video. Sometimes a banner will pop up, and I don't know how ads are sold in that manner, how they're decided per video, and what happens there. That's very much the invisible force that generates our revenue. But I'm not sure. I think if you don't see an ad, then technically I don't think there's ad revenue.
If you don't see an ad, there's not, and that's why mobile for the longest amount of time was not giving us any revenue. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I do.
But remember, it'd be like 1,000 mobile views means zero, nothing, because at that time they weren't popping ads correctly, and now
Which made no sense. That hurt everybody involved.
Yeah,
really weird.
But it needs to show the ad for somebody to get anything.
It's hard for me to picture exactly what mode he's talking about in that question, and so it makes me wonder if it's maybe coincidence that he's watching videos with no pre-rolls, or if it truly is a mode that just restricts advertisements altogether without being like a YouTube Premium membership. Because if it's a YouTube Premium, then we do get the ad revenue.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, just like you guys are saying, if it's something that legit restricts just any ads across the board, I mean, yeah, you guys are right. There's no way there's any revenue going in.
Yeah, there's no counting on that one, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely not.
So shout out to all of you who sit through our ads. We appreciate you.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Carlton Dexter, I was just thinking, I believe you said in videos, I guess he's talking about me, that Anthem would be very important in saving BioWare after the failure of Mass Effect Andromeda. What are your thoughts now on BioWare now that Anthem is out and having a lot of issues? You know, it's actually kind of funny. I had a video that did well but got like mass downvoted about how I said I'm concerned, like, and this was like when Anthem was first revealed. And I was like, I think it was called like Why I Don't Trust Anthem. And I just broke down how they're not the same BioWare. I feel like we don't know enough about the game. Something seems strange. And like I'm talking, this was like initial reveal. And Maddie was right. Anyway, we can all answer this question, of course. Yeah. What are my thoughts now on BioWare now that Anthem is out and having a lot of issues? They used to be, the way I look at it is they used to be a developer that my eyes used to light up when I saw their game or their name on a product, and now it's just like they're in that bin of developers that I see and I'm like, oh God, they're working on it. And that's a shame because they've made multiple favorite games of all time for me. Like it hurts, you know, like you don't want that for them. You know, they made the Mass Effect series, they made KOTOR, they made Dragon Age Origins, like Jade Empire, like, and I'm sure you guys maybe have played like Baldur's Gate or Icewind Dale, like you know, just timeless role-playing games, and to see them, you know, make a halfy kind of, we'll call it, with Mass Effect Andromeda, which landed for some because of its gameplay. Story was definitely not there. I think most can agree on that. And then Anthem being just this colossal failure. You know, I know we all like our sizzle negative words for our videos out there, but for real, man, like that game was a failure across the board, and it was really pounded in when they went to E3, EA, they being EA, and talked nothing about it, and the only thing they said was, yeah, we're still working on Anthem. Like, that's all they said. It was unbelievable. And I don't think anyone predicted this, but I'm sorry, like, that game is, like, dead on Twitch. I think someone did a viewer count, and people were, like, comparing, like, old retro games, and they were saying, like, this game from, like, 2006 has more players than Anthem currently does. Like, what I'd love to see when it comes to BioWare is for them to learn from this. You know, kind of, there's good experimentation, and there's, hey, stay in your fucking lane kind of stuff, where this is a situation where if it ends up being a strong lesson that they learn, where they can build something better after this and go, all right, that's not our thing, fine. But it kind of reminded me of Bethesda Game Studios with 76. Like, some wanted multiplayer, some, not everybody, some wanted multiplayer in your games. Yeah. But when you did it the way 76 started off, it was like, yo, just stay with RPGs, because that was what you were good at. You know, even at Fallout 4, where people thought it was at its worst, I still thought it was pretty solid.
I love Fallout 4.
What about you fellas? What are your thoughts on BioWare now after Anthem?
Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, thanks. I think that it's interesting when you talk about, hey, BioWare, are you learning from this? And, can you stay in your lane? Because I think the question a lot of us ask is how much of that question should be focused at them and how much needs to be focused at EA? Because we all know that there's a relationship there that may or may not be part of the problem. But obviously, like you said, we do also know that the current BioWare also just isn't the same BioWare it used to be. Yeah. So it could be all factors kind of working against it. And the way Anthem is going right now, and with, I hate to be nervous about the next Dragon Age, but I know that we all pretty much are nervous about the next Dragon Age. If it also really tanks the way Andromeda and Anthem did, it will be, if it's not already, it'll be the most legendary fall from grace I think we will have ever seen and might even ever see. Well, okay, maybe you go back to like Atari falling off back in the day and stuff, but at least the kind of modern era.
Yeah, current gaming, I think that would be probably one of if not the biggest fall off.
I mean, every single game and series you listed, I mean, KOTOR, for the love of God, should be your get out of jail free card forever. And they have already thrown that thing out of the water, man. And with everything in Mass Effect, and I think the first 2 Dragon Ages were great. I know people hate Dragon Age 2. I actually really like Dragon Age 2.
I like Dragon Age 2. I liked it way more than Inquisition, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, but and it's interesting because with Inquisition, I think that's a situation where I didn't like Inquisition just because I found it boring. It wasn't so much that it was bad. And it's not falling prey to the problems that Anthem are falling prey to, which is the monetization, the roadmaps, DLC, incomplete, blah, blah, blah. Inquisition was a complete, solidly built game. Yeah. I just found it boring. I just found it really boring. And so they were still kind of working within the wheelhouse of we're BioWare and we care and we make good games. So I just don't know. I'd love to see them get saved, and I would love to find out that maybe they can operate more autonomously without EA's leadership. And
I'd love to see them do what Bungie did with Activision. I would love to see that.
That'd be interesting, right? That would be very interesting. I think that well, but here's the thing is people could argue that didn't necessarily work out very well either. Because they've now since left anyway, right? They just kind of called that whole thing quits. Although, like I said earlier, I like Destiny 1 and 2. So I still think they made good games with flaws, but I still think they made 2 pretty good games.
Right.
I do see what you're saying. I think it would be very interesting if they did something like that, and probably way better for BioWare if they did. But they probably don't have that power when you look at how much power EA themselves do have. So, we got that big write-up about the crunch and the really shitty conditions at BioWare, and so that makes you kind of think, is it really on BioWare as much as it is EA? It's kind of like it kind of roped them in with the guilt of the whole situation, but I don't know. I just I hope that they turn it around, man, but they might not.
It was interesting to talk to some people who worked at BioWare because they've been my company since day one, since day one, and talk to them when they worked with the doctors at Microsoft. And then prior on Baldur's Gate, and the crunch was there even then. A lot of people like to sort of assume it only began like at EA, and it's like, the crunch mentality's been around since day one. It's just like now we're starting to out it. I would personally say that the fall from grace for me is the fact that I cringe when I think of them making a new KOTOR instead of get excited.
Yeah.
And that disturbs me. I don't get too emotional about this stuff. It's companies. But it's still bothersome a little bit. That disturbs me a little bit, being like, wow. Or the fact that Star Trek Online or Star Wars Online is actually pretty goddamn good. The Knights of the Republic is actually is actually a solid story and stuff, and they couldn't do that. And you're all, that's weird. Like, how the fuck did that occur? So I think once the doctors left, just like Rare, once you have the certain creative body leave, the entire world changes. And when the doctors left, shit changed because they came into the world not having game experience. And I think that says something. I think sometimes that's the freshness you need is somebody who doesn't have, they're outside not held down. Yeah. And then by the time they left, they were. If you read their leaving letters, damn, son. And that was before the big EA stuff really became a thing. When they you could already tell. Like they were on the outs. They were like, "Peace out, bitches. We ain't ever coming back." The guy who brews beer is like, "No," like he's just adamant. He's like, "Fucking never happening." So I think that the only way they could do it is if they did do the same kind of thing. That maybe they split off from EA and then they bring in people from outside that are role players, right? People from board games, people from D&D, those kind of people.
But then it's like who has the power who has the power in those relationships to make that decision? You know, like, does it have to be joint? Is there any legal power that BioWare has to be like, we want to leave kind of thing? It's
like Bungie. Bungie bought themselves out.
Was it a purchase out? I thought it was more like a
no, it was
like
a purchase out
thing. Okay,
it was a purchase out. Yeah, gotcha. They bought them. And which is cool though, because not to be rude, I don't think they were great when they were working for Microsoft at the end. I think there was already issues with Bungie, and then they left. Even though I like Destiny, like you, I liked 1 and 2, but there was some stories going on about the people who were at the top of Bungie already prior to them leaving Microsoft, and then they went to Activision, and I think we were all like, "What the fuck?
Right?
Like, what's happening right now?" Or Bungie, and they went to Activision. And we were like surprised.
Was the last game they made with Microsoft was Halo 3? I think before they left.
They did Halo 3, and then they did
ODST. I bet
they made, or was ODST them? But then they also made like Stubbs the Zombie? They made a couple side games too. I don't remember what they were. Didn't they make the pirate game? Didn't Bungie make like a 2D pirate sailing game as well?
Oh boy.
I believe they did. You might want to look it up. Okay. Yeah, they made some side stuff, but there were already stories about like the leadership going a little weird there. I think turnover's good for the leadership sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. Get somebody fresh in there to be like, dude, we don't want to follow the same rules that got us in the shit position we're in right now.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I feel like one more failure
could
and it would change. We'll probably see a name change.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Go ahead, change
almost
it.
like
Bio. Just reverse it.
I feel it would be like, kind of like irrational games. I feel like that's what happened.
Yeah.
Right. It's very possible.
Yeah.
Let's see here. We're going to combine 2 questions because they're kind of the same thing. We'll start off with Tropical Ice Cow. I recently picked up GTA 5 again, but on PC, and found myself constantly switching between keyboard and mouse and controller. Is there many games on PC like this for you, or do you prefer a controller over keyboard and mouse? To which Crazy Herb also asked, do you prefer keyboard and mouse or controller? I don't game on the PC a ton. When I do, if I can use the controller, I will, but there's certain situations, like recently I got Battalion 1944 on sale, and that's a very, it's a solid game, man, and that's like very much like a Counter-Strike style shooter, we'll say, where, you gotta make those shots hit, and the advantage is to the people with the keyboard and mouse, so you gotta play that way, I feel. So it depends on the experience. If I'm playing like a third-person game, I especially want a controller. It pretty much, I grew up with the controller. I can deal with keyboard and mouse, but I'm always doing this kind of position when I'm fucking editing, when I'm working. Like, I like to just rest the controller in my lap and kick my feet up. So maybe there's just too much work tied to it, but, I just, if I can use a controller, that's what I'm going for.
Yeah.
I test them all for reviews, so I switch off. Whatever works is what works. So I'll test them both. And go, this feels better, or this doesn't. So I would agree with you. Like when you're doing a multiplayer game, if you're going in with mouse and keyboard and you're using your gamepad, there might be a little bit. We were talking about unbalanced before. That is past unbalanced. That's broken. Like when you go against somebody and you've got your
own experience.
Dude, yeah, I've had friends who are like, I'm gonna play with you guys, like in Arma. Takedown plays, Takedown. You had him on this podcast. He's like, I'm gonna play Arma with a gamepad, and I'm like, okay, dude. And he couldn't hit shit, man.
Yeah.
It was just
because there's no aim assist, so it's like your
level of fidelity is incredible between the two.
So yeah, I have a weird kind of answer to this because I'm not a big PC gamer. I have nothing against it. It's just I just like the simplicity of consoles, and I just grew up a console gamer. But I've definitely played a couple of games on PC, and my approach to playing PC is that I want to, if I'm going to play a game on PC, I want the thing that makes playing on a PC unique. So I prefer the mouse and keyboard for that reason. It's like if I'm going to have a controller in my hand, why wouldn't I? Most games are this on all platforms anyway. Why wouldn't I play it on my PlayStation or my Xbox? So if I'm going to go to PC, the few times I've played a game really heavily on PC, which is like my first Skyrim, my second Fallout 3, Dragon Age 1 and 2, and Diablo 1, 2, and 3, all those things, it's like I want the mouse and keyboard feel because then it's like I'm playing PC the way it's supposed to be played. Like this is the design, this is what makes it a unique experience. So, and I know most people play with just regular controllers on PC, and that's fine. But to me, it's like I want what makes it what it is. So.
Right. Do you know? Let me throw. So we had this discussion, and somebody did remind me of something a couple months ago because I said the same thing you did, and they're like, he stopped me in the middle of the Discord, and he's like, "Bitch, a PC is flexible on purpose. You should be able
Sure.
to use whatever you want. And I was all,
Well, yeah.
because I'm
Yeah.
I'm like PC is in front, right? Like here's how I play a PC game.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
the
totally.
monitor's right here, the mouse and keyboard. And he was all, but it's the PC has those USB ports for a reason and should be able to
Sure.
use whatever so which is better? See, I agree with you, but at the same time, I see his point. Like, I do see the point of, well, yeah, the flexibility is there. Because, for example, do you steering wheel? I got to tell you, I used to play all gamepad. I'd get steering wheel out occasionally. Now, whenever I'm doing a racing game, it's steering wheel. Like,
Nice.
absolutely all the
It's all
time.
about the
It's all about the peripherals. But that's mostly for PC. But yeah, like, I agree with you. But I have to say his point is valid. Like, I don't know where
yeah.
I don't
I
know
mean,
where I shed on that one.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I think what it comes down to is you and I just happen to have a preference. But I think the great thing about PC is that it offers
Yeah,
options.
right.
So that is just like I think the Switch is great because of the versatility of the 78 ways you can play that. Same with PC. Like, I love that people play games on PC with the gamepad, and that's what allows them to do it. I just know when I gravitate towards PC, it's because I want to feel something different than everything else I do on my TV.
Right.
So that's why I like
get that.
mouse and keyboard. So,
Yeah.
I get that.
yeah.
We have time for one more question. I apologize to any patrons who had their questions missed. AC Denton asks, what are your thoughts on the new Steam Labs update and its current experiments, which are micro 6-second trailers, machine learning for recommending games, etc.? What other things do you think Valve should experiment with through Steam Labs? So this is the thing, I didn't get a chance to fully read up on it, but this is the thing, right, that let's say I put 10 hours into KOTOR. I put way more into that, by the way, but let's say I did. They would recommend other RPGs based, like, through my time spent with RPGs, right? Is that kind of how it works?
Pretty much. That's pretty much how it works.
Don't they
And
do
then
that
they
anyway?
also
Don't they
show
do
you-
suggestions like, hey, because you own this game, you should try this?
Yeah, but that's using the tags as genre-specific tags. So if you're a FPS fan and you played a game that's based on FPS, it can say, okay, this is an FPS game, so pop it in. This is more machine learning, using the AI to identify how long you've spent. For example, if I own 10 FPS games but play a driving game for 100 hours, this would be able to delineate between the two. And go,
I kind of like that. That doesn't sound
yeah,
bad.
it's not. It's just you guys need to see this, man. And the reason why I was laughing is because it is hilarious. You can go to their page and it will show you 6-second trailers of the games. And you'll just be like, what? It's like an MTV music video crunched down to like 30 seconds in its recommendations. It's really weird. I mean, overall, I would say it seems like Steam is just trying new shit. So I don't really have anything to add other than that it was funny.
That's what everyone was complaining about. And they were like, Steve's doing nothing. Well, now they're doing something.
It's just weird. It's just weird.
Yeah.
But there's nothing necessarily wrong with it.
Okay. Rob, what about you?
It's kind of out of my wheelhouse, so I really don't have much. I don't know. I mean, because you said it was about Streamlabs, is what he asked about, right? But you guys were talking about Steam.
It's Steam Labs. It's
so Steam Labs. Okay,
yeah, it's just like Streamlabs, but it's missing the art. Like everybody was confused on the same thing. Yeah, it's
no
Steam
idea.
Labs, and it's basically just a fix to the search algorithms, really, using AI to figure it out.
That's what it sounds like the way you were describing, like the trailer kind of situation. I'm not a streamer. I don't really do any of that stuff. I couldn't even use regular Streamlabs to save my life. I was trying to figure it out the other day. So, it's kind of out of my wheelhouse, so I don't know. I don't have much to add, really.
Okay. That'll do it then. That will do it.
Awesome. What was that? That was like
2 hours 26 minutes. That would have been a 3-hour
Excellent.
podcast.
That was a blast.
If we included the last one, yeah, that would have. Oh my gosh, that was a long ass show. That was a blast.
It didn't feel long. It didn't
No,
feel
no,
long.
that's
Like
the thing.
when you said it was that long, I kept looking at my clock, going, "Am I
You're like,
off
really?
by an hour or something?" Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah,
Well-
no, dudes, that was a blast. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, man. We appreciate you giving more than your time. You gave us a lot here, man. We really appreciate that. You're always welcome on.
Yeah, for sure.
All it takes is
I'd
a
love
DM.
to come back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all it takes is a DM. You just go, Matt, I'm ready. It's like, okay.
How do you post these and stuff? I think they go up like 2 days later normally.
Yes, correct. Every Sunday they go live. I mean,
Audio goes
literally-
to patrons early, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say
It'll go to
within
patrons today.
once we shut off the recording, within like 20 minutes, I have it up on my Patreon for people to listen.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so
Gotcha.
It gives
Yeah,
people
because I
early
wanted to make
access.
sure that I wanted to make sure to like tweet it out and like
Pimp it out.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Pimp it
that's
out.
great.
Yeah.
We like
Pimp
that.
it,
We
pimp
usually
it.
don't ask that of our guests, but we like it when you do. Anyway.
Oh yeah, I think it makes sense.
We appreciate your time. Be sure to check out Rob's channel. I'll have that linked in the description down below. Great creator, huge Metroid fan. So if you guys like Metroid, go support the man. Awesome discussions there.
Yeah.
And that'll do it. Any closing words, boys?
No, thanks for coming on, man. That was a blast.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, and we'll see you guys next week with episode 211. Peace out.